Can you hear me now? Yes. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. It's a summery sort of feel to this late winter's afternoon. We're in the middle of the Kruger National Park, and you're watching Safari Live.
Ready.
Standing by.
Five, four, three, two, one. You are live, you are live.
Sorry about that slight glitch there at the beginning, everybody. Like I say, it's a very pleasant afternoon out. 29 degrees, I'm told, about 84 degrees Fahrenheit or so. One day I'll be able to remember those without having to stumble over my words every time I have to say them. The light is very white today. My name is James Henry. On camera today is David. Hello, David.
Hello, James.
It's very nice to be back with you, of course. You've been away, wassailing around the world.
Indeed.
On the other vehicle, a special treat, everybody. We have Stefan Winterboer, the Mystic Boer, full in front of camera today. And if you look very carefully at the thumb of his cameraman, Gracie, aged 9 in Ohio, you'll see one specially designed for you. We are going to go, David and I that is, and therefore all of you, we're going to go off to the far west, drive down the western boundary of Djuma, see if there are any leopard tracks that way, and then we're going to do the southern boundary and see the same. The idea, because I really want to see Karula's little babies. I haven't seen them for a very long time, so it would be good to see them again. That is my plan. Steph, I think, is going to go around the northern side and see what he can find that way. It's been a hot day, so hopefully lots of elephants, but we'll see as the afternoon unfolds. Lovely to have you with us. Please do talk to us. Hashtag Safari Live or questions at wildearth.tv. Anton. Hello, you're a new viewer, and you say, what is this? Well, Anton, some might describe it as a circus, some might describe it as a great hodgepodge of eccentricity tossed into the middle of nowhere, but most would describe it as the world's largest safari vehicle. And basically you're on a live game drive. We're in the northeast corner of South Africa, that is the world's most beautiful country, unquestionably, and we're on the western fringes of the iconic Kruger National Park. And what we're going to be doing is driving around for the next 3 hours or so, and we do this twice a day, hoping to find the various animals that come around. We don't know what is where, because this is an enormous wildlife area of 8.5 million acres, as I said. And so, Anton, don't go anywhere, stay where you are, and hopefully we'll have some wonderful things to show you. While I go off to the west, heading off to the north and east, the great Stefan Winterboer, let's go and say hello to him.
Good afternoon, and yes, I'm actually in a car. I didn't quite know what to do with this steering wheel and all these buttons and pedals when I first got into the car, and thank goodness for James for actually saying hello to you, because I think I would have crashed the car. But yes, I am on the car. We are driving today. Brian is on the camera, and we have a flyby. There we go.
Dragon thumb for you, Gracie. Hope you like it.
That's it. In case you didn't catch that, that was a dragon thumb for you, Gracie. Brian hopes you like it. Took him all of the half a day to draw that. He's been trying out various designs, and he finally settled on one that is actually quite cool, as far as I'm concerned, at least anyway. We are heading down Twin Dams, and we are going to go and look at the watering points. It's been a very, very hot day today. And look what we have here. Oh, now try and get me out of the way. Here, wait, I think what's going to be easier. Sorry, Brian. Rather than fight my head out of the way. I'm constantly berated for the way that my shiny bald head gets in the way of all these nice shots for you. So we've got some kudu here. This is a small breeding herd of kudu, and I say breeding herd because of the presence of a youngster. But this is what you're looking at now. That's a full-grown female all 500, no, not quite, about 300 pounds of female. And there you have the babies and the rest of the herd, made up of females, immature males, and then little calves like you're looking at now. That's about a 1.5-year-old calf. New brothers and sisters to be born in January. Most of the females that you're looking at are heavily pregnant. This one was born probably about 1.5 years ago now. You can see the overgrown feet basically and legs, not feet, overgrown legs for that skinny little neck and head. That is a giveaway. Very difficult to actually gauge just looking at a single animal, but coming now into your screen from the right will be a full-grown female, and you can see that her neck and head are a little bit more in proportion to those legs, followed by another calf behind her. And some impala photobombing the shoot. A young impala, well, kudus. I love kudus. They're one of the most graceful of the antelope out here. And then we have a young male impala. You can see from those straight up horns that he's got there. Those horns haven't started to get that characteristic bend or lyre shape to them. And that is because he was born literally about 1 year ago. The impala get born in about November, December time. And they all get born at the same time. And it creates a bit of a glut amongst the predators here, and more babies survive into adulthood that way. And it's actually a very effective strategy, to be honest. There are more impala in the Kruger National Park than any of your other large mammals. They've got an incredibly effective breeding structure in that sense. They're able to utilize both grass and plant matter, and so, or plant and leaf matter, and so their diet is hugely variable, which allows them some adaptation. They are supreme at keeping open areas open. Now, for years, scientists thought that elephant were responsible for open areas, but in actual fact, lately it's swinging towards them believing that impala are the ones that keep it open. So an elephant will move into an area and clear a stand of trees, or elephants would move into an area and clear a stand of trees. Impala would then immediately populate that open area and keep growth from happening, thus creating this open area. Not much past that is understood. I mean, it's obvious that less trees and more sunlight promotes grass. On the fringes of these particular open areas, you'll have some of your more protein-rich grasses, or your climax grasses, and then in the middle of these open areas, you'll start to get your subclimax grasses, but they make quite good hay material. So I don't know, I think at the second and third layer down on these levels, it starts to get so complicated with so many variables playing or interplaying with one another. It's difficult to actually see what is good and what is bad. There's no doubt that pumped watering holes have had a dramatic increase in, or have had a dramatic effect on the increase in population numbers. But far from having the dramatic decrease in population numbers when these dams have been closed, it seems to have done nothing to the impala numbers. They seem to be quite capable of existing without water, which adds another variable that's difficult to decide. What is actually causing these impala numbers to increase? No one really knows. That's the wonderful thing about the Kruger National Park, is that nobody knows anything really, if you take that standpoint. And constant study is needed to understand all these different levels and all these different systems that are going and playing against one another and interplaying with one another and are reliant on one another. And if you ask the Kruger National Park, if you ask any of the old scientists that come through here, almost to a man or to a woman will tell you that after 40 years in this industry, they know less than they did when they started. And I'm sure that can be said for many of us. Now, I'd like to bid a warm welcome to Hugo, who's a brand new viewer to Safari Live. So welcome aboard, Hugo, and I hope to share some of the questions with you with the rest of our audience ongoing, so don't stop them coming. But as your first question as a Wild Earth and Safari Live viewer, you've wanted to know how often or how common it is to see sable in the Kruger National Park. It is uncommon to see sable in the Kruger National Park. There are only around about 350 sable in the Kruger National Park in an area that's roughly 3.5 million hectares big. you're looking at about 8 or 9 million acres. So 350 individual animals is, to start with, a low number. However, this portion of the Sabi Sand Game Reserve, which is adjacent to the Kruger National Park but with a common boundary and no fence, i.e. animals can move from one place to another, sees its fair share of sable. And we last saw a sable, I don't know, Brian, less than 6 months ago. I think it was at the onset of the dry season a couple of months ago. We had a lone sable bull come in from the Kruger National Park, come right up to Voyatella Pan, and then make his way back into the Kruger National Park. And there have been a variety of different reports across the Nkoro and Cheetah Plains, two of our nearby adjacent properties that one of them, Cheetah Plains, we can traverse on Nkoro we can't, but they're right next to one another, of sable coming in and onto their open areas in front of their lodge during the evenings. And then I know Mala Mala has a semi-permanent sort of herd of sable that live on their Kruger National Park Mala Mala boundary. So within a very small area, we do have sable here, but we don't see them that many times a year because they are just only 350 of them. So nice question there. Not as common as I've seen sable in other places in the park. I would say that the northern end of Botswana, around Kasane town, there's a game reserve there that borders Namibia and Botswana. And I've definitely seen a lot of sable there. And then in Zambia, I've seen portions of game reserves there that have a lot of sable. But on that note, I think we're going to go through to, and we'll leave you with a view of this kudu. He's actually just right next to the car. And we're going to send you over to James.
Everybody, we've turned on to Arathusa Terra Incognito to the west. We're hoping to find, I don't know really. I got some distressing news while we were off air, everybody. Karula and her babies are on Chitwa. Thank you, James Richard, for ruining my afternoon. So now we're going to have to find Tingana or Shadow if we want to see leopards. Alternatively, I don't know, we might find something else. We're going towards Red Dam, because of course, sorry Davey, I'm just reversing because I thought that tree looked a bit thick, like there might be a leopard lurking in the top of it. You know what I mean? No, I mean, no, I don't think there is. I think it's just a bit of tree that looks a bit like another bit of tree. It is not a leopard in the tree. Okay, so my plan then is we're going to go to Red Dam here. We'll follow the line of the great, what's this drainage line called again? It's the Marakeni drainage line, there we go. We'll go to the west of Arathusa, down the other side and back out and see what we can find on the way there. Which reminds me, I must change the radio channel so that I might hear what the people at Arathusa and Elephant Plains and Simbambili have to say to us. So for those of you who are new viewers, for example Anton, who was wondering what on earth he was watching, Anton, we operate on 6,500 acres or so, 2,500 hectares. And one of the pieces of land that we use is this one called Arathusa. It's 800 hectares in extent, in acres that is. It's always so difficult to work out. 1,200, 1,500, it's more than that. It's 2,000 acres. And then off to the far east is Cheetah Plains, which we're not going to go to this afternoon because we're over here. And Elephant Plains, who I've just mentioned, is the other side of this, Simbambili to the north, and they all traverse the same piece of land. So they have their own radio channel, and that's why I have to change the channel so we can hear them. And if they find something nice, then we can go and have a look. And if we find something nice, then we'll call them, and they might decide to come and have a look as well. And that's basically how it works. It's quite clever, really. Right, there's a waterhole up ahead. There's been a hippopotamus living in it for the last little while. Sort of sub-optimal hippopotamus territory. It's very, very bright out here at the moment. I'm just trying to figure out, I think we're changing the times again, if I'm not mistaken. I stand to correction here. on the 1st of September. Is that correct? But not in the evening. Or is it in the evening? I don't remember. Yeah, we will probably change the evening one. Yes, I thank you, Rebecca. I realized the morning one had already changed. This I realized, of course, because I've been taking the morning one for the last little while. Now, the evening one will probably change to half an hour later, just after the 1st of spring, which is the 1st of September. And so it'll be slightly softer light as we go out. But it is getting quite hot. And you'll notice that we don't even take the spotlight out at the moment, at the end of drive. Ah, there is a hippopotamus, David, and he has a friend. He has a friend called Thomas the Terrapin. There he is. This is just a special shout out to all our new viewers to say, please do just tell us you're watching. It's lovely to have you with us, and tell us where you're watching from. It's always a good thing to know where in the world we're watching from, and that is not to in any way cast any kind of aspersion on our regular viewers. It's obviously great to have you along too. Without you and without your constant conversation, well, this kind of thing just couldn't exist, could it? And there he is. You can just see his ears and eyes poked out the water, keeping an eye out and an ear out for anything that might interest him, or more importantly, threaten him. So like I say, it's quite hot out here. That is a serrated hinged terrapin, everybody. And the serrated hinged terrapin is a reptile, obviously. Perhaps not so obviously, but he is a reptile, which means that because he spends all the time in the water, especially on a winter's day like today, and it was pretty cold this morning, in fact it was pretty cold until fairly late on, because of that he has to come out into the sun to warm up, otherwise his body just simply doesn't function properly. And so he's come out onto what he probably thinks is a bit of a rock to sun himself. Something else of vital importance I wanted to tell you about that terrapin, but I've now completely forgotten what it was. Never mind. It obviously wasn't that important. Oh yes, I do remember now. Many of you would have seen the oxpeckers, and I wonder if you didn't see some oxpeckers with Steph, with the kudu and the impala he was showing you. Many of you will know that the oxpeckers eat the ticks off the land mammals, and these serrated hinged terrapins do the same kind of thing. They act as sort of water-bound oxpeckers. There's an oxpecker on the top of the hippo. Look at that. 2 of them. That is very cool. And they're not actually eating any ticks off him. They've decided that they're going to have a drink of water. Isn't that cool? Excuse me. That is very cool, actually. They're not eating anything off him, they're just bathing in the water, using him as a rock in exactly the same way that the terrapin is. And now one's having a perfunctory peck or two to see if there's any blood in the offing, because that's what they're looking for. Blood. Vampirous birds. And they're all red-billed oxpeckers. Not to be confused with the yellow-billed variety. Oh, they're flying off. Why did they fly off? What has caused them consternation? I don't see any raptors. And I'm just going to be quiet for 1 second, or not 1 second, slightly more than that, maybe 10 seconds. Just have a listen and see what you can hear. Now the reason, of course, that one can't be quiet for longer than 10 seconds in an atmosphere like this is that you would go to sleep if you were quiet for more than 10 seconds. you might just have been able to hear a couple of Egyptian geese going wah, 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 quietly sort of hissing at each other. Perhaps you heard the blacksmith lapwing going tink, 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 as he foraged a little bit around the side of this pan, but otherwise just a very gentle northeasterly breeze. Marvellous. Alrighty, let's head along, and we're going to go into the Marikani drainage. Hello Mia, you're 4 years old, and it's good to hear from you again before we just roll quietly into this water. Mia, you want to know why the water is green? Mia, it's something called algae, which is a special kind of a creature, I suppose you could say. It's not quite a plant, it's not an animal either. And it likes to grow in the top of water that doesn't have any chemicals in it, and so that's why it's green. It's the same reason as your pool will go green, or a pool will go green, if you don't put any chlorine in it. And chlorine is a special stuff that keeps it clean. The hippo will get dirty, but that's fine. He's supposed to be a little bit dirty. That's how he stays cool. It's how his skin stays protected from the sun. Righty, now, just around the... Whoa, David, there's a bit of a sinkhole there. Yes. Just around the corner here, there is the great Marikani River, and we shall go into it and see what delights lie in the deep shade. But before we do that, there is a zebra that just warrants our attention. There we go. That zebra is very impolite. It has not turned round at all to say hello to us. And again, you can just get a sense of the silence. You might be able to hear them just clicking their feet together, snorting like horses. There we go. And the slight tearing sound of the grass as they graze. Let me sneak forward. There's some others just up ahead. One's particularly brave, actually. Let's go around the corner here. There we are. Now, I think that was the stallion that we were looking at, and I think these are his two wives, both of whom are probably pregnant. I don't see any others around here. And as I was saying this morning, I don't think these things are doing too badly. I don't think the drought's affected them that horribly at all. I think it's quite amazing. Only the elephants seem to look that sort of ropey. The rest are looking absolutely fine. Even the warthogs, which are supposed to be hit hard by these droughts, they seem to be fine too. Maybe in a month's time that will change if we haven't had rain. But I was chatting to Michael Grover, who of course does a lot of work with the communities outside, and he does a lot of work specifically with the cattle herders. And he said to me, I said, they must be looking terrible, the cattle now. He said, no, not too bad. There was that little flush of rain that we had about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and apparently that did wonders for that little flush of green to come out of the grassy seedbed, and that really did help the cattle out here. And that's great, and I'm sure it had the same effect for the animals here. Righty, let us move along, David. Here we have arrived in the water. Hello, Gracie, age 9. You say, am I having a cold? I did have a bit of a cold, Gracie, but I'm okay now. I've just got a bit of a snoggy nose, so I'm sorry about that. But you say that you would give me orange juice and read me a story. Well, that sounds actually wonderful, Gracie. So I hope one day that you'll be able to do that to me. Great. Let's go across to Steph and see what he's doing, and I shall deal with my snoggy nose.
Well, I'm glad for you that you didn't have to watch James deal with his, whatever he said nose. I didn't quite get that. And what's going through my mind now, I choose not to repeat in polite company. And that's good. You've caught us sort of having done Twin Dams, got to Twin Dams, not much going on there. A lot of activity, footprint activity in terms of hippopotamus from last night. No one had driven there this morning, but also no predator tracks on the road whatsoever, barring a civet, which we saw tracks of last night. So no real activity there. And so that makes me want to come and have a look at what's happening around Treehouse Dam. Because between Vuyatela, or Djuma, Treehouse and Twin Dams, and with the wild card being Buffelshoek, there's almost always something going on. And we don't always find it. But walking around here has taught me one thing about this particular property, in that there is almost always something of note happening here all the time. And it's just a question of a bit of luck and a little bit of hard work and perseverance. And quite often we can pull something relatively interesting, at least, out of the bag. So I'm going to be circling these places. I think friend James has already gone and seen Buffelshoek for us and switched off his car and was watching those terrapins having a drink off of the back of or near that hippopotamus, which gave him some time to listen to the bush around him. And I'm hoping that we have got some sighting of something small or interesting. That, James was at Red Dam, not at Buffelshoek Dam. Okay, that leaves that whole area open for us to explore as well. Nice. Thank you very much for that, Rebecca. I think James actually did tell me, but I was only listening with half an ear as I was busy trying to prep this vehicle and understand where my feet go and what radio works what. Right. So, what we need is we need a point of interest, Mr. Brian, so that I can stop, switch off, and while I'm busy talking to you, can dedicate some portion of my anatomy, my ears hopefully, and a little piece of brain capacity to listening to the bush around us. It's been hot today. Not much is going to be moving around at this time. That being said, I think predators are making the most of these. It is hot, but relatively cool conditions, and the overabundance of prey animals in a weakened state. And I mean, just the sheer amount of kills that Karula has had in the last month alone just makes me it's astounding how these animals can capitalize on different things. Now, hold on, Brian. Are you busy? Seeing if we can get this little bit. I want to go back just a little bit. There's a young starling. Let's go here. See if we can get that orange eye, which is just spectacular. There you go. Much obliged to. We've got an angle issue. All right. Let's see if I can remedy that. How's that, Brian? I might just get his eye over the top there. Sorry, this is just one of those things. I think I've been a little bit over-optimistic with this particular sighting. That is a blue-eared starling that you're having a look at there. Characteristic is that very orange eye in that iridescent sheen that they have on their feathers. And you can see that sheen evidence. Now, their feathers are actually completely black, completely saturated with a substance called melanin. And then unique to the starlings, I think, and potentially a few sunbirds, although these are probably some of the biggest iridescent birds that we find, where the whole bird is iridescent, not just portions of it. The bird is invested in a very thick layer of keratin. Now, keratin is similar to your hair or your fingernails, and that keratin layer completely covers the feather, very thick covering, for lack of a better description, and that diffuses the light that goes through that feather, giving you that wonderful sheen, which has now disappeared off of your screen. Not to worry, it gave us the opportunity to switch off and to listen to the bush around us. Now, this time of the day, I'm expecting to hear things like the cracking of branches from elephant feeding, potentially the lowing of a buffalo, oxpeckers. On the off chance that you've got a predator hunting at the moment, would be alarm calls of animals, alarm calls of squirrels, monkeys, impala and kudu, so on and so forth. And I do absolutely know that leopard in this particular part of the world move around absolutely through even the heat of the day. So Audrey, who's only 12 years old and asking this question all the way from the US, hello Audrey, you've asked me if we have the same squirrels as you have in the US, but you've noticed that the squirrels where you live don't sound the same as they do here. So Audrey, so the easy answer to your question is no, we don't have exactly the same squirrels, although all squirrels pretty much are related to one another. They probably have some other type of common ancestor. So they all have that little curly tail. They are mainly daytime or diurnal animals. They all have a liking for storing food, and they're all relatively cute. Now, we've got another bird here. Let's see if we can get... No? Let's see if we can go past. Now, the trick with these birds is to let them believe that you haven't seen them. So obviously pointing a camera at them is going to make it a little bit more difficult, but have a look at the awesome camouflage of that bird. That is a bird called a thick-knee, and it gets its name thick-knee from its specific name. And why it's called a thick-knee escapes me. I have, in all the years of watching these birds, never understood why they're called thick-knees. But this bird is a water thick-knee. We get two different types in this particular part of South Africa. We get the water and the spotted thick-knee. This is the water thick-knee, and is almost always associated to pans and to dams and to watercourses all over the place. They are nocturnal, and because they are nocturnal, they have this enormous eye. Brian, there's another one closer to us even here, underneath on the right-hand side of this bush. There we go. They live in pairs, sometimes more than that, and have a look at that. That is just, take a screenshot, everybody. That is about as good as what you can get a water thick-knee. There we go. Boom. Nicely done. Alright, all of you that might have been a little bit slow off of the mark, absolutely share those pictures on any of our social media platforms, and you're welcome to email your photos through to questions@wildearth.tv. And I'm not sure if, never having been on Twitter, I don't really know if you can share photos on Twitter. If you can, use the hashtag SafariLive and see what you can do. Well, there you go. So you sure can share photos on Twitter. You never say that working for such a technologically advanced company such as Wild Earth Media that I wouldn't have a social media presence, but I don't. I've never been on Twitter or Instagram. I wouldn't even know what their homepage looks like. All right, so onwards with our search for something interesting. Water at this time of the year and leading into October, and in any parts of Southern Africa that you go to, water equals life. Where you find water, you find life. And even though food becomes a very, very difficult thing to find, and eventually becomes impossible to find, animals will always be more water biased than they will be food biased. And I'll explain that in a second. We've got, there we go. As usual, the grey duiker diving away into the bushes over there, one of the dwarf antelope, and they very rarely actually stop and give you the ability to even zoom in on them. Steenbok, on the other hand, will race off and then stop and give you a chance sometimes. Duiker absolutely don't. So one of the dwarf antelope that we have out here, the common or grey duiker, as you get into Central Africa, the different duiker species become, there you go, we just caught that one through the gap there. Let's see if we can get, there you go. Nice one, Brian, well done. Caught her in a little bit of a moment, and I think that's precisely why we are managing to get these shots. I have no doubt once finished, dash off. There we go. Boom, 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 those jinks. All right. Alrighty, let's send you through to James. He's got a vulture for you.
Not a duiker, everybody. Death in the sky. Sorry, I've been very tempted to use that term ever since Brent Leo Smith used it once when describing the humble lizard buzzard. Not death in the sky. I thought there might be some kind of death on the ground underneath these chaps, but there isn't. Those are two white-backed vultures, the most common vulture species that we get here. And I'm not really sure what they're doing, really. I think they're just resting up. There's one other, not too far from here, but I think it's on a nest. And I wonder if one of these isn't an offspring and the other partner. They're quite splendid birds. I mean, that's an enormous fellow. Let me tell you how big he is. Give me 1 second. Everyone is starting to get mobile now from Elephant Plains and from Arathusa and from Simbambalai. Let me just quickly tell you. So he's three and a bit feet tall, everyone. So I mean he's almost 3'3". So that's a fairly large bird. Weighs about 11 pounds or so, 5.5 kilograms. And his wingspan, I always found the wingspan interesting, 2.2 meters. Now 2.2 meters is about 8 feet or so. Not quite, about 7.5 feet. So that is quite impressive. And it is the most common vulture by far that we get out here. And quite sweetly they are monogamous, building a very uncomfortable looking stick platform, often in the crown of a tree. But if I was a little bird and I was born to the uncomfortableness that is a vulture's nest, I feel I would be disappointed with my lot in life. Not for them, the gentle spider-lined cup that is the want of, say, the white-crowned shrike, which makes a most comfortable nest, and nest certainly nothing like the comfort of the nest of the grey penduline tit, which makes it a sort of it's an astoundingly woven, incredible sort of intricately constructed sack of, I think it's largely spiders' webs. And the chicks in there must be very comfortable indeed. I suppose there's a certain amount of health involved in growing up in a stick nest. There's not so much lice around the place. And likewise you grow up tough, Like growing up in a bad neighborhood, David. Makes you tough. So I'm so tough. Right, let's leave our white-backed vultures. We're going to do an about turn. We just came out of the drainage line to the northern side in the hopes of seeing what they were looking at. But I think they're actually just looking towards another vulture which is in a nest. So let's turn around here. And we'll see what else we can see. We did find some hyena tracks, but tracking hyenas is like tracking the world's fastest marathon runner. They go so very far with so little effort that it's not a great idea. There's a big hyena den on Elephant Plains, everybody, and I wish we could go to it because I'm so missing our hyenas. I don't know where they've gone. No one seems to have found their den, so it's rather sad. They gave us such an immense amount of joy going to their den sites every day. Anyway, these things go in cycles, they do. Otherwise, we did also see some kudu. They were feeding inside the drainage. But other than that, not much. Hello, Aaron. You want to know if we get spur-winged geese here? Yes, we do get spur-winged geese, Aaron. I've seen a few here. They do need water, though, so normally we'll only see them if there's good amounts of water. So absolutely, you could see them all over Djuma, all over Cheetah Plains, as and when the rains come. You'll find them at the bigger water points, definitely, Aaron, yeah. The spur-winged goose, of course, the very largest goose that is found in this area, an enormous fellow, quite greenish.
Sometimes all that you can do is leave decisions in the road up to chance, and that's exactly what we did here. I literally left the steering wheel alone and felt which way I was compelled to go at that particular junction, and we were compelled to go left for some unbeknownst reason. And left is where we'll go. Now, while James finds some new signal, you're going to be on another portion of our endless search for something interesting to show you out here. A little bit of, we've had a few impala around, birds are going crazy, we've had some dwarf mongoose that have made an appearance while you were looking at this interesting vulture activity that you had. Nothing too much. Oh, and we had the kudus when we opened up the show as well. There's some kudus. So things are moving around. I mean, even while I'm driving here, to be honest, in the shade, so let me get in the shade there, in the shade and in the wind, it's probably easily 10 degrees colder than out in the open. So it's not actually that hot today. Now, we were talking about the fact that animals will always be more water biased than they are food biased, and that is almost a universal truth. So where there's water in the dry times of the year, leading up to and just past October, water is exactly where we need to be concentrating our searches, because animals can go a decent amount of time without food, but cannot go long periods of time without water. There's a generalization: 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. That's a generalization. And so you can see that even though they've got a little bit of food, they can still do a long time, relatively, compared to them not being able to get access to water. And in places like the Chobe National Park, elephants literally wait for the rain on the Chobe River. So the entire month of October, the rains normally only come in the last week of October, somewhere around there. The entire month of October, elephants in their tens of thousands sit on the side of the Chobe River and pretty much just stay hydrated, and if they can, in a bit of the shade, but even that is secondary to their need for water. Now, while I've been chatting, I've been doing a bad thing and not talking about what you're having a look at. And what you're having a look at here is 2 impala rams, evidenced by their horns, busy doing a bit of a dance around one another. I'm not quite sure exactly why, and it's one of the reasons why it's taken me so long to actually answer what we're looking at. When I did stop, they were twinkle-toesing around one another. Now, the larger of the 2 males seems to be walking away, and he's followed. There he goes. So now he's just turned around and he's gone again back to this male, posturing. That side-on display in front of the other male impala is a very deliberate move called posturing. And there he's posturing again, walking right up into his face, showing the other impala how long his horns are and how beautiful his body is. The other male impala can't help but to respond by turning to face the other male. There we go, the obligatory head shake. Now, this time of the year is not the impala's rut. That happens in about May. And so I think that this is just them practicing, to be quite honest. I don't think there's any serious intent here at all. It's not to say just because it's not in the rut time doesn't mean that boys don't fight. As you'd all know, boys have this tendency to want to scuffle and wrestle with one another. And even if it's not that serious, it definitely will be practice for when it does become serious. And that impala on the left-hand side with the big horns will be big enough next year to actually challenge any of the dominant male impala in this area for dominance over a herd and mating rights, obviously, that come with that. I think let's see if we can go a little bit more forward, or is this good for you, Brian? This is all good. There you go, that ritual that they're going through at the moment, facing one another, a little bit of a lip licking, that yawning, nodding, tails flicking, then all of a sudden the distracted stare out into the distance. That's all part of this whole dance that impala do with one another. One backing off, one advancing, tails wagging. I know it may seem like I'm just talking about what I'm witnessing here, but that is all actually part of this dance that they do with one another. And then one trying to walk away, and then they'll reset again. And they'll do this on and off. No animal really... Oh, there we go. Okay, so maybe it is a bit more serious. Gee whiz. Well, that is a proper fight. That's amazing. They're having a decent fight. Have a look at that. Now other males coming in from the sides, looking to add any advantage they can. Look at that. That is a deathly fight. They've got their horns locked, pushing those ridges against one another, using their powerful back legs. You can see them kicking out those back legs, trying to hold down. There you got the one trying to push the horns into the body cavity of the other one. They're now locked with one another. One will have to disengage. That'll open the neck and the chest cavity for a thrust. Those horns wickedly sharp. Have a look at the power there. This is incredible. This is probably the longest impala fight I've ever seen in my 20 years of guarding. Look at them pushing each other around. Other impala in the periphery. And there they break. They're locked again. Let's give them some space. Every nerve in my body is telling me go forward. Whoa, that was a big thrust. You saw that one impala lift right up into the air there. That is quite capable of killing that impala. So let's just look for some blood. Looks like he may just have been picked up on the horns. Look at that. See the one now, he's got the leverage advantage. Leverage advantage, which will twist the horn. There we go. I can actually see I've no blood just yet. They're just pushing against one another. There we go. And there's the winner. And there you had it. So the one that ran off in the front, he was the loser. The one that chased, he was the victor. Now, I would love, in the next couple of minutes, to have a look at that, to re-look at that again, and see at what point in those last couple of seconds the winner or the loser was decided there. I've got a feeling probably went back 20 or 30 seconds or so to where you saw that other impala have the leverage and was twisting that head to the side. And what happens is, as they're busy fighting with one another, the one impala will try and twist to the side, and then that is the death strike. Right here in the side of the neck, or into the body cavity behind the armpit here. That is where impala that I've seen dead from fighting like that, that is the death strike. In the side of the neck, and the other horn usually in underneath the armpit. Wasn't that amazing to see? That was probably the best impala fight I've ever seen. I certainly see Brian's face smiling over there. Sighting of the week so far for us, absolutely. All right, so on that note, and because I want to go and see what's happening over there, and we don't really know where those impalas are, we're going to send you over to James. We'll catch up with you a little bit down the road.
Hello everybody, we're searching for the magnificent bird that is the long-billed crombeck. David had him perfectly in picture, but then he decided that he was very camera shy, and as Rebecca started to count us in, he thought to hell with this, and off he flew. And there was also a cardinal woodpecker. I know this sounds like long, tall stories to you, but really there was a cardinal woodpecker somewhere in there. David, I'm going to make the call of the long-billed crombeck, and let us see if we can't attract him back. Come on, crombeck, where are you? Oh, 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 yes, there, top of the tree there, top of the tree. I think David may have just broken his knee, everybody. Let me go back a bit. Can you see him? He's just very, very top of the tree there. On the right-hand side, you got him. So, you see the closest bit to us? Just to the right of that, there's another little bit, and he's just in the middle there. So if that's him, you got him. Up, up, up. That's it. You got him. Now that's not very nice of us to do to him, everybody, but we wanted to see him, so we'll be okay. There he is, the long-billed crombeck. He too is monogamous, everyone. And he makes a beautiful nest, a hanging sort of purse. But he is parasitized by one of the cuckoos, the Claus's cuckoo. He's quite special, isn't he? And he's called long-billed because he has a slightly long bill, I suppose. But mostly, his most obvious thing is that he does not have a tail. You see that? He's got almost no tail at all. He's deeply confused as to what on earth was shouting. And they eat it with that long bill like that. The big thing for them to eat, of course, are invertebrates. Insects, termites, spiders, mantids, the odd tick, the odd insect egg even apparently, and they like grapes. I've just read that, I didn't remember that. They like grapes, everybody. The long-billed crombeck, a sophisticated palate, enjoys a little bit of Shiraz of an evening. On those wonderful colours, the grey and the blue, with a little bit of sort of, what would you describe that as, sort of, I don't know, pale tawny. That really is a lovely array of colours there, and you can just see the buds of the marula tree coming out there. That's really special as well. And there's another one calling now, and that's why he's looked round. There. Getting upset. Oh. He's flown down. Oh, he's right here. He's in that same bush that we started out at, but he's gone into some very thick stuff there, so I think we'll probably leave him, rather than challenge David too much this early into his work cycle. Very nice. The long-billed crombeck. Right, we're approaching Arathusa Mud Wallow. Used to be known as Arathusa Dam. No longer. David, have you been here since you've been back from leave? Oh, you're in for a shock. There ain't no water here anymore, David. It's just a bit of mud. A couple of fish eagles. Oh, I don't know if there are any fish eagles here anymore. They may have completed all of the catfish by now. Let's have a look-see. I must say, Arathusa is very dry at the moment. They don't pump much water here, which I think is a very brave decision on their part. There is a slender mongoose, though. We're not going to get him from here, though. There's a fish eagle flying away. Did you see it there? There are two of them there. I didn't see them early enough, so they took fright. Two juvenile fish eagles. Got a lovely picture of one the other day. I haven't shown my greatest photography critic yet, that is David, my picture of the fish eagle. I shall have to show him. Oh, there they're calling. Listen. Oh, they're chasing each other. A bit of a dogfight going on here. Oh, they've left each other be. Okay, one of them's landed very close by here. Let's pull up the road here and have a look at him. There you are, David. You see him there in the tree? Well, let's see if he responds. He's very young. You see very mottled plumage. There's another one calling from way in the distance. It's a really delightful shot, actually, of a young fish eagle. And when we say juvenile, I mean he's obviously almost the size of an adult, if not the size of an adult, but he's just not mature yet. And I think they take about 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, to get to their adult plumage. And the other one is just a little bit older than this. Ooh, elephant. There's an elephant. In fact, there are a whole lot of elephants. There's some across there. This looks like a young bull in front of us. And there are actually a whole lot in the drainage line over there. Let's just watch this chap here because he's out in the open. And while we drive parallel with him, Dave, I'm just going to ask you, there's a huge fish eagle coming over the top of us here. There he is. Straight over the top of us. That's very cool. Alright, let's get in front of the... We'll get in front of the elephant so you can have a nice shot of him. I wonder if he's come along here thinking maybe there'll be something nice for me to drink. And there isn't. He's a young bull and I think he's a little irritated as well. I'm sure he's feeling the pressure of the drought and the lack of things to eat. So he's watching us. And that's what he was shaking his head at. Let's wait here. Hello, Debbie. You're asking me to do the impossible. You're asking me to try and predict the weather. You say, will there be any small rains before the big rains come? Debbie, it's possible. We've had one small rain already. And, you know, last year in September we had one big sort of dumping of about 20 millimeters, and then it just stopped altogether almost. So we might be lucky. We might get a little bit in September. And that's Arathusa Lodge that you're looking at. No, he's a young fellow, ambling along. Hello, Marlene. You're wondering about the big rains and when we think they'll come. Well, you can wait as long as the end of November, Marlene. Could be as early as September. We've had a couple of bets on. I reckon the 10th of October is when we're going to get the first big sort of 20 millimeter storm. David, what do you think?
September 18th.
September the 18th. That was very definite, David. Do you know some... It's your birthday. Yes, well, that's a good day. Good day then for you. The 18th of September, David is convinced the deluge will begin. Perhaps he is correct. It would be very nice to get it that early, I must say. Let's go a little bit further forward. There's another elephant coming behind us, but I'm not going to... He's quite far away still. But there's seems to be a herd in the trees just up ahead. Ooh, this chap is now getting a little ornery with us. He came running at us, that's no good. Very cheeky. If it was a great big 35-year-old bull, we wouldn't be saying very cheeky, we'd be driving away at great speed. While this elephant is being very cheeky, David, on the road in front of us, if you'd like, if you're getting... No, well, hang on a second, wait. Let's just keep on him for now. He doesn't like the sound of the car, I think. I think these elephants are getting more and more irritated. They're more... the further into the dry season we go. I think he's also a bit bored. Dave, just on the front of the road there is an elephant, but there's also straight on in the front there's some tiny little yellow birds, and they're yellow-fronted canaries, and they're rather special. Can you see them?
Yes.
Yeah, so you do. Yellow-fronted canary, everybody. We don't often get them in such glorious detail. I just love that colour. I think it's stunning. He's found a little bit of seed bed for him to dig in. That's what he's eating. Like a little finch. And if I'm not mistaken, the only canary species that we get here. Certainly the only one I've ever seen here. Isn't he great? Colour yellow, I suppose, quite a common pigment in the birds. I just think it's beautiful. That's sort of a custard yellow. I think rather than yellow-fronted canary, the custard-coloured canary would be a much better name. Don't you, Dave? The custard-coloured canary. Right, let's move forward. There is a nice herd of elephants in front of us. And while we move forward, we'll just watch this fellow, see if he decides to give us another rev. No, he's decided we weren't nearly terrified of him enough, so he's going to leave us alone. Now, as I've said to you before, David, of course, you can tell he's a male by the rounded front of his head. Can you see that? Yes. Yes. Just a little herd feeding in the bushes here. Hello, John Atmore. You ask a very good question. Just before I answer it, when you see a small breeding herd of elephants, i.e. one cow and one calf, on the left-hand side, David, the first thing you should do is? Correct. Which we've done, and assessed that there are not a whole lot of other elephants coming from the other side, so we can comfortably look at these two. John, you say, what would an African elephant herd accept into the herd an Indian or Asian elephant? And the answer, John, is probably not, but I don't know for sure. They are very kind of sympathetic, if you like, animals. They don't like the distress of other animals, and I wonder if an Asian elephant, which doesn't even belong to the same genus, so they're part of the same family, but I suppose you might think of them as being as distantly related to each other as leopards are from caracal or African wildcats. So they're even further related from each other than leopards and lions are. We know they don't really speak much. But I think elephants, because of their social structure, and this has certainly been proven in other matriarchal societies, have a slightly elevated sort of, I suppose what we would term human intelligence. And so maybe they would adopt an African elephant, but a decent Indian elephant. I wonder if it hasn't happened. I don't think it's happened in the wild, but I wonder if it hasn't happened in captivity in these animal parks and that sort of thing, and I wonder if there aren't cases of African and Asian elephants living together. I'd love to know if anybody knows. Please let us know. Hashtag Safari Live, questions@wildearth.tv if you happen to be on the email. That's a young calf. I mean, obviously calling this a breeding herd is a bit of a laugh because there's one cow and one calf, but strictly speaking, that's exactly what you would call it. And that calf is probably, as he has his little Dutch bath, about 4 years old, maybe. And just tossing some dust on him because I think they just like the feeling of it on their skin, you know. There might be some others further forward, you know, gone in front of them, but I'm not sure. I'm just watching behind us just to see our bull. He's not doing anything, he's just standing exactly where we left him. He sneaks slightly forward so we can get a view of the mum. Everything out here seems really kind of soporific at the moment. They're all kind of very sleepy in this relatively hot afternoon. And she's just he's picking up a few leaves, possibly the odd pod that's been dropped. In fact, what are they eating, Dave? Because that's not a tree they'd normally eat. You know, it's a guarri bush. I think that's one or two things that are growing underneath there. Oh, there's another species of tree there. It's a spikethorn. They're eating common spikethorn, or Gymnosporia buxifolia. Which is pretty tannin rich and very thorny, so I'm not sure they'd eat it unless they didn't really feel like they had a choice. They're eating with slightly long teeth, I feel. Very nice. And she's thinking about having a suckle, I think, but she's probably slightly too old. Oops, I've managed to unplug myself. Sorry about that, Rebecca, if you've been trying to talk to me. I'm back in. That's interesting. Leslie in Seattle, this is wonderful. You say that in your zoo you had a herd of 3 elephants, 1 African, 2 Asian, and you said the African was the dominant animal, but they got on with each other fine. That's wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Leslie. Let's head across to Steph, get an update from him. I'm going to continue on my quest to the south of Arathusa.
Welcome back, and you caught us trawling the cheetah cut line for whatever we can find at the moment. I'm hearing these sporadic updates on the radio from time to time that say that some guys are tracking some cheetah, although not in our particular traverse, very close by. And cheetah are one of those animals that will absolutely move during a hot day like this. They'll take a little bit of time off during the hottest time of the day, which here would have been around about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. But up until that point, they'd move around here, and you know, the chance to see cheetah, they move epically. And sorry, there's just something in the road there that caught my eye, and I'll let you know what it is. You can see what it is. There we go. Now, I see about exactly the same as that. That's what my eye is looking at now. Not only on the camera, but that's what I basically see. And you can see it looks like something was in the road there. Still looks like something is in the road there, but in actual fact, with a quick check on my binos, it's just a tree that's next to the road. The road curves around it. But yeah, I just wanted to come back to that pretty awesome impala sighting that we shared a few minutes ago. For any of you out there that are, or I know you wouldn't have been guessing about this, but let me just make the statement anyway. That is how my luck works. My luck is literally getting up to a junction like we did, letting my hands go, and as we get close to the junction, feeling compelled to go in one direction or another, and then having a pretty amazing sighting from something arbitrary like that. Just these common things. That is how my luck goes. Brent, on the other hand, for those of you who don't know this, obviously has this amazing ability to dredge up incredible cat sightings from a whiff and a smoke and a hint of a track on the road. That, unfortunately, I see it's a skill that seems to have bypassed me in favor of these very weird, very special, very rare sightings like we had with that impala. And for those of you who have just been watching a Safari Live for a short space of time, feel free to ask around the chat rooms and ask how many full-blown impala fights have been seen like that over the years here. And you'll see that there'll be a handful. We see, I would say, dozens, perhaps even hundreds of cub events, which you'd think would be fairly rare. We see that much, much more common than we do impala fights like we've just had. Another dwarf antelope here. Since we are on the dwarf antelope, there is a female steenbok. I'm sure there's one in the open there. We've got a couple here. You just see the bum there. So that is a full-grown antelope, a female, lack of horns you can just see there. Steenbok, Steenbok. And they are arid area specialists. They do incredibly well in bushveld like we have here. Them and the grey duikers are probably, next to impala, the most common of the antelope that we see, and usually running off at top speed. This one has found something of interest in the bushes there. They are browsers. They eat leaves. They don't eat grass. Something there has caught this little steenbok's attention. There you go. Full grown and in quite good condition, I must be honest with you. This particular antelope doesn't have to drink water at all. It gets enough water from the vegetation that it eats. Can you believe, with all this virtual sand that we have here, it finds enough water not to have to drink. You find them in pairs. It's called a monogamous pair. However, the two of them are very rarely together in their tiny little territories. The males are almost always apart from the females. And I don't really know why. I haven't really read anything that says why, but it's probably to avoid detection. Being as small as what you are, or as what this particular antelope is, living in a bound territory doesn't give you many options when the lions come a-visiting. And I think the fact that the two of them are separated most of the time means that there's less chance for both of them being caught by a pride of lion or by a hunting pack of dogs or whatever it is that come through here. So for me, it's just a survival strategy. I don't think it's because they dislike one another until they have to mate and have a baby. But quite unique in terms of what they do, their specialization. They bury their dung, very similar to how a house cat does in a litter box. They will scrape with their hoof, move over the scrape, defecate into the depression, and then they will turn around and scrape the sand over their feces again in an effort to mask the smell and therefore their presence in an area. In areas with lots of ant bear holes, they've also been known to have their babies underground and bury I suppose, the leftovers. They eat the placenta, most animals do, and then they bury the fluid, the birthing fluid, they bury with scraping their hooves over it, once again just to mask the scent of their presence in any particular area. So I feel quite justified in saying that the couple don't hate one another. They probably speak to one another or have some form of communication that doesn't require tangible reassurance thereof. They don't need to touch one another like hippos do, or warthog for that matter of fact, or any of the mongoose or any of the monkeys out here. Oh, it's such a beautiful afternoon, actually. Coming back to this October discussion that I've had on and off now for the last 20 or 30 minutes or so. So animals will almost always be biased towards water. And as the distance between water or a water source and food becomes past the horizon that they can get to before they will dehydrate, animals stop feeding, or they reduce the amount of feeding that they do in any case to a point where it becomes almost negligible. They will be around water points, moving a little bit further away from the water, a couple of 100 yards, and that's because at that particular point in time, lions almost inevitably camp out just near the water points and pick off those individuals too weak to run away. And they will literally conserve energy lying up in clumps around these watering points, just waiting for the rain to come. And by that point, it's usually around about October, the middle of October. Here, rain usually falls anywhere around about the 10th of October is when we'll have the first rains, but the first real serious rains will only sort of come at the end of October into November, where we'll see a flush of the grass and of all the leaves that keep these animals sustained, and then it almost becomes a frenzy. From mid-November all the way through until the end of March, middle of April, it's just an absolute frenzy of activity. So, let's take a wager on the official date that rain is going to happen here. All things considered, and you've been privy to a bunch of discussions amongst myself, James, and Brent, and Jamie about what effect El Nino will have and what effect La Nina has, and are we moving from El Nino into La Nina? Some people have said that the last 30 years or so have been marked by flooding around every 10th year or so, around the end of every decade. Whereas the absolute driest times of the year have been marked by the middle of the decade. We're in 2016 now, so on the cusp of one of these dry, wet scenarios. I don't know, let's make a prediction here. I'm going to go with the 10th of October. Let's just hit the nail square on the middle of the head there. I'm going to say 10th of October, we're going to have our first significant rain, and I'm going to set range to that, the 20 mil range. So significant rain here is anything more than 20 millimeters of rain that falls within a 24-hour period. And Brian's on 20th of September. It's Paul Kruger's birthday, the 10th of October, and luck would have it that on Paul Kruger's birthday, Paul Kruger was a former president of South Africa and is who the Kruger National Park is named after. And that is sort of the mark that people give to rain in this particular area. So James and I are sticking to Paul Kruger's birthday. That's how you're supposed to say it, although you'll never really catch me doing that again. And I'll share it with James. We'll share the prize money, whatever it ends up being. All right, off we go. So we are on the hunt for a cheetah that was seen coming. I don't think it was seen coming into this area. It's definitely off our traverse, but definitely moving in this particular direction. And with the temperatures not being that hot at the moment, I would well imagine that cheetah that hasn't caught anything could quite easily come here. I mean, it's a couple of 100 yards, that's it. And we have seen cheetah exactly where we are before. Male cheetah definitely are also territorial, very similar to how lion and leopard are. And there's nothing that would prohibit a cheetah from coming through this area to refresh a scent mark or just visit an old haunt. Bless you. Brian having a sneeze with the dust kicked up by the wheels. It's also starting to get to that particular time of year where we need to start thinking of sunscreen to preserve our youth. And definitely I go through more sunscreen than what I do shampoo in any given period of time. The massive fin of a big nose that I have and my forehead that tends to stretch. Oh, sorry, Brian. Has this particular white heat or white hot. It is such a winter sky that you're seeing there. So the August winds have kicked a bit of the dust into the atmosphere here, and the dust here is white. And what it does is it gives this milkiness, milky smudge to the horizon and to the sun. Lends itself to some pretty epic sunrises and sunsets that you've no doubt been sharing with everybody over the last couple of weeks. But it also sort of blurs out that beautiful blue that the sky has after a rainstorm or at the beginning of winter, those first few crisp mornings. So this dust that gradually builds up in the atmosphere, this dryness that builds up in the atmosphere, all heralds the rain. So Thomas, you've just asked me, or us at least anyway, you've just asked us how much rain we need to stave off the drought in any given summer or winter. We have a summer rainfall here. Summer for us is anywhere from about the 1st of November until the 31st of March, as per my definition of summer here. And generally, on an average year, we'll have about 450 mils of rain. That's about that much in any given year. Anything half of that, which is what we've had now, is considered a drought. Anything double that, so up to this much, is considered a very wet or flooding year. Now, in 2012, we had over 1,000 mils of rain. 1,000 millimeters of rain fell here, about 1,200 in actual fact. And in 2016, we had about less than 200 millimeters of rain that's fallen. So you can see that the mean range over a very short space of time is quite big. But when we look at average, and this is just statistically speaking, of course, Thomas, we have about 450 mils of rain in a year, and from that horizon we will decide plus or minus. As to are we actually in one of the worst droughts that this country's ever seen, I don't know. I really don't know. I have... So, excuse me with just breaking off my conversation there, but Erica, all the way from Latvia, hello Erica, you've just asked me a very interesting question and I really needed to hear all the details over there. You wanted to know, do we have extremes in weather here and things like wind and heat, I suppose, in terms of heat waves and snow and ice and tornadoes and hurricanes? And have I experienced any of those? And what is the worst weather that I've experienced here and what was it? So let's just start right at the beginning, Erica. We don't have any extreme weather conditions over here. South Africa is actually one of these pretty epic places that have very little geologically going on, so no volcanoes and earthquakes and mudslides, etc. And from a climatic point of view, we're also pretty stable. So we don't get things, of course there are anomalies and we do find tornadoes from time to time, and in very wet years, tail ends of hurricanes do give us an above average rainfall, but we don't have that sort of thing here as commonplace. We don't get very hot temperatures. I mean, although it peaks at about 50 degrees centigrade here in summertime, it's really just very localized to here. And it doesn't get very cold either. I think the coldest recorded temperature in South Africa is probably about it'll be in the teens in degrees centigrade. What it actually is, I'm not too sure. So we don't have those extremes. I must say probably the worst weather that I experience here would be lightning. This area has some spectacular lightning storms and wind associated with those lightning storms. Nothing on a tornado or hurricane basis, but definitely lightning. And I've done game drives in the lightning, in the rain, trying to get home to base, of course, but sometimes you just get caught out there and you just have to weather the storm. And that's probably about the most extreme, the most violent, these huge crashes of lightning and thunder, literally over your head, striking trees close to where you are. You could smell the burning in the atmosphere. You can feel the electricity in the air. Of course, those massive crashes of sound associated with big lightning storms are always just impressive to hear. So that's probably about it. And I hope that answered your question. What type of weather do you get in Latvia? I suppose is an equally interesting question. It's one of these countries that you hear much about, but so very rarely see anything here in South Africa. We don't see sports teams coming from Latvia here. And we definitely have very, very few visitors here. That being said, I did once drive around a lady president, not a female, excuse me, a lady president, Madame President, from Latvia, probably about 10 or 15 years ago as a guest of mine. A very interesting experience, needless to say. All right, so now we're on one of these roads that are on the eastern side of Buffelshoek Dam, and I'm hopefully going to be approaching the dam from the eastern side, so from the Torchwood side. Let's see what is there. I would only imagine it's a little bit of green pond scum at the moment, made up of much algae and not much else. Here we've got a... What do you think has done this? Oh, obviously an elephant has pulled this tree out, rubbing on it more than likely. And you can see that there's the root being pulled out. The tree itself now is bowed over the road and will present a significant obstacle for our aerial to go under. Luckily our aerials are all attached with bungee cords, and I'm hoping with just a little bit of coaxing we could probably go underneath the highest point. There we go. No harm done. Snap back up into place without so much as losing you for a split second. Now very close to where we are now is where the one lioness of the Nkahuma Pride had her cubs for a while. She had her den literally just in front of us in the termite mound. And it afforded us a couple of weeks, I don't think it was as much as 3 weeks, but definitely 2 weeks worth of viewing her from almost on top down onto this drainage line where she would lie and suckle her cubs. And they were still tiny when we saw them. They were just these little balls of fluff with their milky white eyes, making their little mewling calls. Something so special to share, especially when you got access to it, you know. All right, we are around about a minute or two from the watering hole. I don't quite know what to expect there. I'd hoped to see that there was some elephant there, but we've seen so little sign of elephant at the moment. I'm almost convinced that elephant move around in these sort of loosely associated herds with one another. 6 to 8 elephants, sometimes as many as 12 elephant on their own, and always in touch with other elephants. We get these 2 or 3 families that will come through here at any given time, different families at different times. And I don't think that there is an elephant herd on Djuma at the moment. So Brian, you haven't seen elephants on Djuma for a day or two, eh? Yeah, a couple of days. So they've moved off and gone to feed somewhere else. That being said, there are elephant tracks all over the road here, unfortunately going away from the dam. Let me just keep my eyes open here. Right, I can see the torchwood that we are talking about there in the background, covered in its red-billed buffalo weavers, another common thing around watering points. There's the sheen of the water in the distance. You'll see it coming into frame over my shoulders. And we have some buffaloes, all that I can see for now, but let's get a little bit closer so that we can see anything else there. Shame these buffalo are starting to look so skinny. Alright, we're going to see if we can get into a nice place to view these buffalo, and they won't run away, but the warthog that James are with definitely will. We'll catch up in a bit.
Pigs. Why are you laughing, David?
This is the way you said it.
They are pigs, everybody. There are some warthogs. A sow and her 2 piglets. I must confess to you, everybody, there's no greater joy I have in the world than when the cameraman is unable to contain himself. Good. So them be pigs, and they're going about their business, and do not believe anybody who tells you that a pig cannot cope with a drought. It is a patent untruth. These chaps are very healthy. They're fat. They're, well, not shiny, but they're full of mud. You can't see their hips. They're in very, very fine shape indeed. And I think this is very interesting, and I've said this to you before, but if you drive from here to Hoedspruit, you drive past a reserve that is a closed reserve, so it's not open to the Kruger, so I think it's probably about 10,000 hectares or so, 24,000 acres. And if you drive along the road next to that reserve on the way to Hoedspruit, you will find warthogs that look like they've come out of Ethiopia circa the famine in the 1980s. Really horrible looking, sort of emaciated animals. And yet you come into this open system where nothing is managed really by people, so the predator numbers are able to regulate in accordance with the prey species numbers and vice versa. And you find these pigs here, and they look fantastic. David, they are pigs. There is nothing to laugh at. Your picture is shaking because the cameraman is unable to contain himself, everybody. Sorry about that. Nothing we can do. So I think that it's quite a lesson for us. And I'll tell you why. We're going to just try and drive a little... No, well, let's wait for them to disappear. I think it's quite interesting because on these smaller reserves, obviously the numbers of animals are often managed, and we think as human beings we know what's going on. This is evidence that we clearly have no idea. And I suspect what happens there is that the... David has got the giggles. I suspect... We're going to drive forward, everybody, and so the shaking doesn't look like David giggling. It looks like my driving. But we think that we know what we're doing, and I suspect in these reserves what happens is that they manage the numbers of lions, for example, and they manage the number of cheetah and numbers of hyenas. Leopards they don't really, because they don't really know how many leopards there are or where they are. But those three other major predators they manage very carefully, and I think you find that they probably overmanage them, and that's why the warthogs have such a tough time. It's really, really been such an eye-opener to me this season. Now, it's round about here that Shadow was seen this morning, and I wondered if she wouldn't like some pig for her lunch. But she hasn't had any pig for lunch, as far as I can see. Tingana, of course, not too far from here yesterday, and he loves a good pig for lunch, David. And there we are. She doesn't think it's very funny that I called her a pig at all. Hello, John in Arkansas, you say? Are warthogs and razorbacks the same species? John, I've never heard of a warthog called a razorback, so I'm going to say no, I don't think so. I don't know what a razorback is. Where do you find razorbacks? I'll just look it up here, but I don't think that they're related at all. I mean, I don't know what a razorback is. I'm assuming it's some kind of wild pig. So I'm going to say to you that I don't think that it's definitely not the same species. But I don't think it would be the same genus either, possibly the same family. All the pigs belong to the same family, and therefore, as you've suggested, they will have a common ancestor of some sort. But I know someone in the final control will now be frantically Googling away to see if they can find out what a razorback is. Ah, an American wild boar. Now, I don't know if an American wild boar is an introduced species or if it is an indigenous American species. So I'm going to have a guess here and say that I think that pigs, are possibly only New World species, at least Old World species, so Eurasia and Africa, but I might be quite wrong there. Anyway, if there is the American wild boar, be it originated in the Old World or the New, yes, it will be a part of the same family, the Suidae. That's the pigs. The pigs which David finds so deeply amusing. As I've said to many of you before, the thing that makes me laugh more than anything else in the world is when somebody on live television or radio gets the giggles and they're unable to stop. And there's nothing they can do, can't cut away from them, and I find it profoundly amusing. It happened to me once here, with David actually. Remember the infamous incident of the hippo drawing, David?
Oh yes, that was Jean-Andre.
Was that with Jean-Andre? Oh. So we know that the razorback is in fact in the Suidae family, so I'm glad I got that correct. Thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca is directing today, Kirsten McLennan-Smith tapping away on the keys. On the googly. Oh, sorry, it's Louise on the googly. I should have known that. Of course, I've been speaking to her half the afternoon. Sorry about that, Louise. Please don't punch me when I return home. Now, there's something else interesting going on here, David. There's a lilac-breasted roller doing its rolling around here somewhere. I've just heard it calling behind us. Someone's safari club. Whose safari club? There it goes. Oh, Breakfast Safari Club. You want to know if warthogs are edible and if they taste delicious? Yes to both answers. Where is this bird now? Let's just stop here for a second and just listen, because it is amazing to watch them, and this bird has been displaying. He flies up into the air and he does these flick-flacks and turns and rolls, and it's really amazing to watch. Anyway, he seems to have stopped now. He's camera shy, a little bit like that Crombeck that we saw earlier. Right, Breakfast Safari Club. You want to know if warthogs are edible and if they taste delicious. As I said, yes, they are very edible, and they are, I think, the best meat you can eat. They are my favorite thing to eat. I've only eaten them 3 or 4 times, but they are delicious. Yes, you are. Very delicious. All right, we're going to leave these pigs alone and let's head across to a hippopotamus with Stefan, and I will try and calm David down.
And there you have the path that the hippo took most recently through the mud here at Buffelshoek Dam. I don't think we can actually call this water anymore. It's literally just algae and I don't know what else. A mixture of everything disgusting. Keeping there, that rock-like thing is a hippo. And while we've been here, he's only moved his face and his come off of his right hip just slightly. It wasn't even in. The buffalo that were here, there were about 5 or 6 buffalo here, didn't faze him in the least. And Brian and I have been musing over the fact that he doesn't seem to be rolling around enjoying the cooling effect that mud evaporating, or water in mud evaporating off of his flanks would give him. He just seems to be lying here very lethargic. That said, hippo do produce a skin secretion that does absorb UV when dry. It's called hipposudoric acid. And on his eyes and just behind his ears, you'll notice a reddish pink tinge. That is the residue from that hipposudoric acid. It dries to like this reddy, pinkish, orangey color depending on the actual animal. And is a natural sunscreen that actually absorbs UV like sun cream does. Can you believe it? I don't know, sometimes these animals and what they've evolved to do and how they've evolved to do it is just astounding. On a large scale, of course, things like hippo and elephant with their trunks, and hippo with their sun cream sweat, and giraffe with their incredibly long necks, and all manner of antelopes with their horns on their bodies and all that sort of thing are amazing. And then as you go smaller, things tend to get more bizarre and more fantastic. You know, as we go into the insect world, things become even more harpoons and poison-filled sacs and mandibles that can cut through who knows what, armor plate, strength so many thousand times of their body weight. Rena, you've just asked, well, you've just commented on the fact that you hope that this hippo doesn't get stuck. That's actually a pretty valid comment, Rena. I've never, you know what, let me rephrase what I was just going to say. I was going to say I've never found a hippo stuck in mud, but I have found lots of hippo skeletons in mud and in pans. And I would only imagine that at a point a hippo would get too weak to release himself from the sucking effect of this mud. They do have a four-toed foot that splays under weight, and as soon as the weight is taken off of it, it actually reduces in diameter and breaks the suction that mud causes. So they're not as prone to getting stuck with their feet in mud. They've got these big wide bellies that are pretty low to the ground that would act as almost a sled-ish type thing. So they are definitely better able at coping with mud than what most other animals are. I mean, considering that their ecological role in this particular web here, or this bioweb that we have here, is to keep channels clean and free-flowing, they definitely have a dredging nature. But, and this is where the but comes in, and why your comment was so interesting, Rena, is that hippo cannot float. They are neutrally buoyant, which means that they neither float nor sink. We've got some buffalo that are returning to the water. I wonder if they've left here, decided that, hang on, wait, so they forgot that there was no grass out there, and it's much easier just to come lie in the mud for the rest of the afternoon. So coming back to that, hippo can't float. They sort of walk on the bottom of pans. They are sort of, they're not denser than water. You can definitely see they're a bit more graceful underwater, but yeah, I would say a bit more graceful than they are on land, but it's not actually true. I would say that they're neutrally buoyant. Unlike these buffalo, I think, with their big, heavy bone structure and their big, heavy horns on their head, they just sink straight to the bottom. So Eileen, on our comment about hippo feet, has asked, are hippo feet similar to elephant feet? Eileen, in the fact that they've got a number of toes covered by a fatty deposit, yes, except that with an elephant, the fatty deposit is entire and gives them an oval or a round foot, whereas with a hippo, they've got their toes. But yes, they splay under weight and they reduce circumference or coverage. Look at this buffalo just horning the mud. Who knows why? Probably because they get these parasites that sit on the creases underneath their horns that just bore into their skulls and their skin, creating what must be one of the itchiest appendages in the animal kingdom, is a set of horns on a buffalo. And I would imagine that the mud would cake these insects and maybe help to slough them off when it dries. Or it could just be the fact that buffalo are cantankerous beings and want to horn the mud. Monique, all the way from London. Good afternoon, Monique. You've asked me, is the hippo sunscreen similar to our human sunscreen, and could it be possible that we've modeled some of it on the hippo sunscreen? Monique, I had a very interesting conversation with a chemist, not the retail store type, a chemist, a real chemist, who told me that sunscreen, there's a compound in sunscreen that's flat in nature or structure, and it absorbs UV. So UV light striking it gets absorbed, and then this particular molecule splits into two different molecules. So that's why sunscreen loses its effect after a while, is that all these sun or UV capturing molecules are split into another molecule, I suppose. I don't know enough about chemistry. James would be far better to explain this than I. But I would imagine that it is very similar to hippos. Hippos would probably have a molecule that absorbs UV and in some way destroys itself. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a need to replace it with their sweat. So they've got a never-ending supply of this UV compound. And I have no doubt that in some chemical way they are probably similar to our sunscreen UVs or UV capturers. However, would it be the exact same molecule? I have no idea, Monique. I don't know enough about that particular topic to tell you. I can tell you, though, that it's called hipposudoric acid, and it is a fairly, well-known compound. I'm sure there are lots and lots of different resources, and you're welcome to please enlighten me, and I will then share it to the rest of our viewers. The fact that if it is similar to our sunscreens, you're welcome. Send it through to, or send your answer or your comment through to that email questions@wildearth.tv, or use that Twitter handle, the hashtag Safari Live, and I'll share it if it comes through, if you can find something significant. I can't remember ever having found anything significant in that particular line, but maybe you're better at looking than I am. Greg, you've made an interesting observation, obviously not now, but over the last couple of weeks. You've noticed that hippo and buffalo will defecate and urinate into this water, increasing the uric acid load of this water, making it in concentrated forms almost absolutely impossible for life to actually live in it. But you wanted to know, when this gets flushed out after heavy rains, would it fertilize in some way areas further downstream? Absolutely. I would say absolutely. There's just such a concentrated soup here of nutrients that is all busy decomposing in some form or another, and is busy having all these other chemicals added to it and all these other compounds added to it. I have no doubt that it would seed areas that don't have this further downstream. And while concentrated in these dried up pans, when diluted again, you might find actually become very useful. So yes, absolutely, I would say that that is a very feasible comment to make. Now, what is baffling to me is the fact that these buffalo were here as we arrived, got up and left. Didn't look like they got up and left because of us. They were following another buffalo. Have now come back. One buffalo has literally just stuck his forehead into the mud, the one on the left-hand side, and his friend, after watching him stick his forehead into the mud, nothing more than that, then plopped himself down into the mud, not really in any decent mud wallow, literally just covering his belly. And here goes his friend. Let's see if he lies down. So Ali, you've asked a question, is it abnormal for only 2 buffalo? You've noticed that buffalo tend to live in big herds. Ali, you are 100% right. That seeing 2 buffalo on their own is abnormal. Buffaloes are generally found in herds, with the exception of these old male buffalo. Old male buffalo, being the size that they are, don't follow the herds around. The herds get so much unnecessary attention from predators. And also with so many mouths to feed, they have to move constantly. That old male buffalo that are quite capable of defending themselves, although that said, quite often old male buffalo like this end life in lions' tummies, will choose to stay behind that melee and that ruckus. And you'll find that anywhere from 1 buffalo to pairs of buffalo, or sometimes even up to 30 male buffalo, will all be seen around a wallow together. So you're right and halfway. in that buffalo tend to be in herds. They're a contact species. They'll tend to be in herds with one another, but it's not uncommon to find full-grown, mature bull buffalo like these, singly or in pairs like this, or in fairly large groups, up to 30 is what I've seen recently. And these form brotherhoods with one another. These buffalo have a relationship with one another, and they will very often come to one another's aid when one or the other, or even both, are being plagued by a lion. An animal this size only really has one animal to fear, and that is a lion, even though a lion is almost a quarter of the weight of one of these big buffalo. Lions are just supremely gifted at hunting. Quite tough to hunt buffalo. Lions have to actually learn how to hunt buffalo. It's not a common thing for them to hunt normally. Lions hunt what is most common in their areas. In this particular area, the lions tend to swallow buffalo whole. They definitely hunt a lot of buffalo here. This one on the left definitely isn't comfortable. He now walked into the mud. He walked out again, looked like he was going to lie down, and you can see him swinging his head from side to side. I wonder if he knows something that we don't. Far more in tune to nature are these animals that live here than what we are. For all our ability to control things around us. So in response to our questions about sunscreen, Fiona, the white Zulu who lives in the UK, hello Fiona, but is originally from South Africa, has forwarded some information to us, and I just have to say thank you for this, Fiona, right off the cuff. Fiona says that the original compound for sunscreen came from seaweed. Seaweeds obviously need a compound to absorb UV when they get left out to dry when the tide goes out, and so the original the prime compound for our modern day sunscreens come from an extract from these seaweeds. So it's not unfeasible to think that the compound in a hippo's sweat is any different from the compound that we have found in our sunscreens today, or find in our sunscreens today. Probably not as effective, and the hippo would need to secrete a lot more of it to have the same effect as our modern chemically enhanced compounds, but definitely very feasible. So thank you, Fiona, and I hope that answered some questions for everybody out there. And on that note, and with this buffalo now finished having his 2-second mud bar, we're going to link you back over to James, and we are going to carry on with our search around this area.
We've taken to some blurry safaris now of... Oh, what's that, David? It seems to be a leopard, indeed. It is a female leopard. It is Shadow. Hello, everybody. There's Shadow. She was found not far from where we saw those pigs a little earlier. In fact, she was found while we were looking at those pigs, and she was found on foot, though, and I was very cross with myself briefly, because I thought I'd driven straight past her, which indeed we had, but she's completely out of sight of the road. And then Ryan's tracker found her, I think, on foot, and now we have this magnificent view of Shadow. She doesn't seem to be, well, particularly active at the moment, but you can see her breathing, which is obviously a good sign. I'm going to sneak very slightly forward, so that we might get a view of her face. But I think it's going to be a little difficult. Ah, there we go. If we... Sorry, David, I seem to have run over a fairly substantial tree. That's the best we're going to get, I'm afraid, at this stage. There we are. So you can see she's in a perfect little nook, a little saddle over the top of the mound there. I haven't seen her now for, gosh, I think about 6 weeks, you know. 6 to 8 weeks. Viam and I last saw her, yes, at least 8 weeks actually. Viam and I last saw her coming out of Treehouse Dam early one morning. And then she disappeared into the block on Djuma between Zoe's Road and Rebecca's, while Lex and I were following her, and she just disappeared. So, a very interesting story behind her. Now, Dorf, you say you've been watching since sunrise, and you say you found a leopard this morning, and is it the same one? This is the same leopard, indeed, Dorf. This is Shadow, and she is the one with the injury on her leg. I haven't seen the injury. I don't know where it is yet. I mean, I'm not sure if she's going to move anytime soon. She looks like she's very restful here. And apparently it's on the back right leg, so the leg that is opposite to the one she's lying on right now. Now, I know that there are a few of you who are new viewers today, so I'll just give you a quick sort of snapshot of history. This leopard is now almost 10 years old. Her mother, Karula, is 12 and a bit, and she's the queen of Djuma. She provides the bulk of our leopard viewing, and we just have had the most wonderful time with her, and many of our long-time viewers have been watching for probably almost 9 years, have watched Karula's life, and Shadow's, you know, just as well. But quite in juxtaposition to her mother, Shadow's life has had an element of tragedy to it. Her mother has raised any number of successful cubs. I think it's 8 in all now with the current bunch. She's lost a few, but that's completely normal. Shadow has yet to raise a cub to independence, and the last 2 cubs she's had, very interestingly, before they've gone independent, before they've been anywhere close to independence age, she seems to have come into estrus again. And what that means is that she starts to totally ignore, basically, her current cub before it's able to look after itself. And if she falls pregnant again, well, then she'll just leave it completely. So it's really quite a tragic story there. She's looking at us now. She doesn't hoist her kills, which I'm sure Brent would have told you about today. Which means that her cubs will inevitably be more threatened. I wonder if she hasn't seen one of those pigs. She's seen something. And so whenever I see her, I feel a little twang of sympathy and sadness, to be honest. And I am becoming more and more convinced that her lack of success is down to a hormonal imbalance or some kind of physiological imbalance. That means she comes into estrus much too soon. We're going to go around the side to where Ryan was there, see if we can get her face in the golden light. Anyway, and I think it's a really nice, it's an interesting story. It's a fascinating one, and this is the joy of what we do, of course, is you can follow the lives of these animals so intently and so closely, and you can come to know them so well. And I know that all of our viewers have their favorites. Some of you have Karula as your favorite, well, most of you do. Some of you find Shadow your favorite. You've got your favorite lions and your favorite elephants and all that sort of thing. And while Karula's is a story of triumph and heroism, Shadow's is one of much more tragedy. Now, Ryan's very close in, so I'm going to try and sneak in as close. I think it's probably fine. Davey, you tell me when you got a shot of her face there. Is that all right? A bit forward? We have a shot. Okay. There we are. Now we're not much more than 2 meters from her. I'm not sure I've ever been this close to Shadow before, you know. Hello, my dear lady. The original princess of Djuma. She might get up and move now. Leopards do move quite a lot during the day, you know. She had a bit of a meal, but Brent said that it had been stolen by hyenas. So maybe she's still hungry. Now let's see if we can see that. She's sneezing. Oh, I'm just going to sneak forward. We might get a slightly better shot of that. Goodness sakes, I've hit the biggest tree in the world. There we go. Sarah, you ask whether it's possible Karula left Shadow too early, and perhaps therefore she didn't learn proper cub rearing. Sarah, I think it's highly unlikely. They don't learn cub rearing, you know. That comes entirely from instinct. And so no, I don't think that's possible. I certainly think it's highly unlikely. It's an Laura, you're in Munich. I think you said in Munich, is that right? You want to know if it's even possible that Shadow's cub should survive. Oh, sorry, New Mexico, not Munich. That's not really the same place, is it, David? Laura, no. If she was to leave her cub now, the cub is almost 7 months old, will be 7 months old in this, around about the 2nd of September, then I would say to you, no, it would be impossible for her to survive. Well, nothing's impossible, it would be highly unlikely. That said, if she holds off 1 more month, then the cub could survive. 8 months is not that impossible for a female leopard to survive from independence. So it is possible. And remember, if she, I mean, it's difficult to say how she'd respond. If she fell pregnant now, would she just ignore her cub completely, or what would happen? I'm going to have to call this in now. Stations, are there any stations making their way to the sighting of Shadow? Copy. Animal is now mobile in a northerly direction towards Arethusa Lodge. There's that injury on her back leg. That does not look nice at all. But she's not limping. So it's probably a flesh wound that is just, it's just not going to feel very nice, but I suspect it's just a flesh wound and she's not limping at all. You know what I think did that, David? No, have another guess. Pig. I think a pig did that. That looks like one of those vicious bottom teeth, bottom canines that the pigs have. I wonder if she didn't take on one of those pigs and get bitten. She's marking her territory, so she's definitely still very much the territorial female of this area. Salayeshe came down into this area briefly, and everyone told me she was taking Shadow's territory. Not so. Shadow's doing fine in her territory here. Beautiful light now. Isn't that nice? That's a lovely shot. Hello, Paddington Bear. You say that you were devastated to hear of my injury this morning. That's very kind of you, Paddington Bear. Are they considering amputation? They tried, Paddington Bear, but I stopped them. I said, nay, nay, I shall be fine. Fear not. I will apply a healing balm. As Shadow goes to sleep, let's head across to Steph with some elephants.
You know, there's just something so peaceful being around an elephant and being in close proximity to elephant. The Kruger National Park is one of the very few parks in Africa where you can get within a couple of yards of elephant and have virtually no effect on them whatsoever. And that is exactly what's happening here. We are probably 10 to 15 yards away from, so 30 feet or so away from this elephant, and you can see how close, we're almost surrounded. We've got an elephant in about a 180-degree arc around us. There's one behind this green bush, and we're going to come across. I'm sure Brian will come across. There's one there, you can just see the tail. No, then there's one, there's 3 of them here, all sharing these black monkey thorns. And then we have another elephant off to our right-hand side, which seems to be scratching herself, it looks like, on a dead branch, and then stuffing dry leaves into her mouth, almost giving us a view straight down her throat as she does so. This is a young bull elephant. Not quite a toddler anymore, not quite a teenager, but absolutely one of these, and not quite that uncomfortable age just yet. I would say that he's probably around about 5 to about 7 years old. There goes the female in the background there, lifting her trunk up, pulling some silver cluster leaf leaves off the bough. Generally, elephants don't eat silver cluster leaf. They are way too high in tannin. They're distasteful almost, very astringent, and their leaves are covered by this fine hair that makes them quite unpleasant on the tongue. But you can see she is absolutely reaching for them. Oh, that is just such a beautiful, beautiful shot. Sunlight filtering through the trees now and the dust in the atmosphere and lending such a beautiful air and quality and atmosphere to these elephants. I wouldn't quite say they're frantic. I mean, I will say that they are moving from bush to bush and tree to tree. As soon as one elephant sees, there you can see that. As soon as one elephant's got a little bit to eat, another elephant will almost always join, and that mother there, or that female, turning her head quite aggressively towards this calf that came out of the bush here off our right-hand side, saying, "This is my bush, please leave me alone." There was no mistaking that intent, and you can see her now plucking. He's now gone off in search of whatever his cousin is busy eating, and she is, as quickly as she can, stuffing leaves into her mouth. Let's see if she allows this youngster. No, she's going to see him off. He wants some of the leaves that she has, and she's just gently saying, "No, thank you. Please leave me alone." That is elephant discipline in its prime. Now we're in a little bit of a wrong place here. You think I should reverse a bit? Nah. Probably going down. Let's go down the road a little bit. Oh, Brian has made a remark that elephants, how can elephants be different colors in different areas? Or can elephants be different colors in different areas? Because the elephants that he's seen in the Pilanesberg National Park, which is also in South Africa, and in the Northwest Province, we're in the Limpopo Province, how they tend to be a bit lighter. Now, they are all around about the same color, to be honest with you. It's just the soil where they stay that gives them a different hue. Elephants love mud bathing, and the mud color that they find themselves in. Look at these two having a bit of a tussle. I think it's gone past the "I want to eat what you're eating," and it's just ended up being in a bit of a game. There's a bit of a smell. I think it's just friendly wrestling. Very similar to how our mom would play wrestle with a little boy, or her little boy. That's exactly what we just saw now. It's just tactile reinforcement of the bond between individuals. So just to come back to that color question, elephant will take on basically the color of the bush around them. There'll always be a type of gray, but depending on the soil color around, they will turn different colors. And you get some in some areas where elephant almost go white. Etosha National Park is well known for their elephants that almost go white from the salt covering from drying up pans in October month, September, October. You can see almost into this elephant's throat the way he's busy eating, the one on the right-hand side. He just shouldered, or used his forehead to break that branch. You can see the trunk, which is an extension of the top lip and the nose. Prehensile, shoving food into the mouth. Tongue, that's that pink thing that you saw there, will come forward and grab the piece of food and then draw it into the mouth, where it shoves it between a molar. There's a molar on each side, top and bottom. 4 molars in total, which have these ridges all over them, and then they grind them down and then it's swallowed. And it's sort of a conveyor belt that just never stops. This time of the year, that feeding conveyor will basically be going almost 24 hours a day. They'll only stop in the middle of the night for a very brief respite, sleeping completely flat. This female now and her calf less than 10 yards away from where we are, and as of yet completely and totally unfussed with where we are. I think this youngster is going to come and say hello. He wants to share the silver cluster leaf. I cannot describe to you how astringent the leaf is on this particular tree. If you took a cup full of baby powder and tried to swallow it, that is about as astringent as the leaves on this tree. It just has so much tannin that it just binds instantly any remnant of saliva you may produce and turns it into this powdery feeling in your mouth. Goes to show you the lengths that these animals will go to survive the drought. And we have a bull that's probably just a few kilograms, a few pounds heavier than this female, and see her tail immediately go up, head up. You can see he's just a little bit bigger than her. Her ears are now out, her tail, once again. He's going to smell, it's a greeting. Let's see if she tolerates him. She's older than what he is. He is still a youngster. I would say that he's just entered his teens, mid-teens, probably around about 12, 13, 14 years old. And she obviously tolerated that greeting. It might even be an older calf of hers. They stay in these groups together. Males will leave anywhere between sort of 12 and 18. Females will stick together in their natal herds, the herds that they were born into their entire lives. They will not move. She's not a particularly big elephant, I'll be honest with you. Giving us a typically baggy, almost pajama pants back view of an elephant. They always got these, it looks like, I don't know. I'd like to say it looks like my father walking down the passage in his pajamas, but I don't quite know. Excuse me, Dad, if you take this as an insult. It wasn't meant to be one. It's just your pajama pants don't fit you as well as what they used to, I think is what I'm trying to say. Have a look at that. There, she just, with tremendous ease, just pulled up that root. Now she's going to use her tusks, putting it in her mouth. There's a little bit more strength there. So grabbing the tusk, grabbing that root in her teeth, and then using her trunk, tusks, and teeth in unison with her muscles to pull out that root, and then eating it. Generally, they just eat the root bark, so they don't eat the root themselves. They just use their teeth to shave off the root bark. Let's see what she does there. We've got elephants appearing out of everywhere here. We've got, literally, we now have elephants probably through about a 270-degree arc around us. Tiffany, you've asked me a question, a nice question. Is there a difference between a breeding herd and a herd of elephants? Tiffany, no, actually, to be honest with you. A breeding herd is generally a herd that has youngsters in it. But almost every single herd in the bush out here will have a look at this little guy coming through here. Sorry, Brian. He was just coming to say hello to an auntie, this little one. Almost every single elephant herd out here will have babies with it. So I would almost say that you could, with elephants at least anyway, you wouldn't be wrong by calling it a herd or a breeding herd. They're one in the same with elephant, Tiffany. But yes, a herd would be something, collection of animals, whether it's formal or informal. In other words, where it's an established herd, where they have a structure, or whether it's not an established herd, similar to how male elephant would sometimes be in association with one another. The breeding herd we reserve for herds with babies. That youngster there, doesn't look like his tusks have erupted yet, so that means that he's less than a year old. They get two sets of tusks. A tusk that falls out of their mouth, it's called a milk tusk, a tusk that falls out of their mouths and just less than a year, and then their adult tusks will erupt at about a year. This dude crossing his legs over here. He's just relaxing. Having a sunset munch, crossing his legs over, quite relaxed. 5 feet away from my car, or 5 yards away from my car, at least anyway. 4 yards away from Brian. They're making quite a noise. I mean, elephants are generally quite silent, but sitting in amongst the herd like we are doing at the moment, I mean, it's actually quite noisy. There's this constant shuffling noise, constant rustling noise from the leaves, constant sort of rubbing. Now this guy's going to come and say hello. Let's see what he does. Wants to come around this side of the tree. And here we've got this youngster coming to say hello to his cousin as well. Isn't quite sure yet where to come. Is he going to come through? Yeah, going to come through. Got a little bit of root that he got from mom as a present. Let's see what these two do with one another. Oh, awesome. Look at this. Over the stump. These are cousins. Greeting. Puffing the scent in the mouth. You need to take out your root before you can do that. It's like a licorice stick almost. Oh, nice stretch on the branch. What a privilege to be so close to these magnificent animals, being persecuted by man, at least since Egyptian days. Since the Egyptians, not since Egyptian days, listen to what I'm saying. Since the Egyptians were at the height of their powers, where the trade in rhino horn has been massive. I mean, elephant tusk, excuse me. Gee whiz. Right, and from our docile elephant, we're going to send you over to Shadow, who's on the move at the moment. See how he chewed the end of that stick. This little elephant has chewed the end. Well, we're not going over to Shadow just yet. We've got a little bit of a problem with James's signal, so you're still with us with these illies, and we just noticed how this little guy has chewed the end of his stick. He has not swallowed it, he's just chewing it, almost the same as the latest. Now he's got a branch stuck in his bum. Yeah, shouted that stick. It was me. There we go. He told us off. See the piece of, it's almost like the latest craze of people chewing bits and pieces of plastic and toothpicks or whatever it is they chew in their mouth. Didn't eat any of that, he just chewed it. Saying hello. Still wants to say hello. Yeah. Greeting, puffing on the genitals once again. And now being pestered. Let's see what the little one does in return. Quite often very brave with mom in the vicinity. Straight down the throat again. Well, there are lots of youngsters here. I wonder where all the adults are. They're literally just one adult. All the rest are sub-adults and juveniles. Ah, alrighty. Well, James definitely has a surprise for you and has found some signal again.
Ooh, we might be live now. I don't know if we are. We tried again last time, everybody, but here is Shadow. She is still moving down through the bushes, and one of our rather important pieces of technological equipment broke as you were coming across to us last time. We've spent an incredible time with her in this incredible light. If I say incredible again, David, please hit me on the back of the head. There are more adjectives in the engine language. In the engine language, is that what I just said? In the English language, everybody, than incredible. But it really has been most spectacular. There we are. Now it is going to be very difficult to follow her from here, everyone, because you can see the bushes are going to get very thick indeed. I am going to, while you look at her, I'm going to whip out a map quickly, because I think that this is going to be nigh on impossible for us to be able to follow her from. Unfortunately, my map thinks that I am not where I am. There we are. Oh, isn't that beautiful? See, that injury is not harming her at all. It'll heal, she'll be absolutely fine. I think the chances of us getting through this bush, everyone, are very small indeed. See her flicking her tail there? Tick, 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 tick. And she's just telling the birds, cool off, don't alarm call at me. Hello Marilyn, very nice question from you and a good one, especially today. You say, would we ever intervene? The guides would certainly never intervene. We're not qualified to intervene. I mean, we've done bits and pieces of conservation work, but we're definitely not vets by any stretch of the imagination, so no, we wouldn't intervene. Would the reserve intervene for a cut like that? Absolutely not. 99% of the time these cats will recover completely from something like that. We're going to try and get around here, everybody, but we cannot drive down through this sort of eroded area. We'll cause damage and we'll run over a whole lot of trees. But Marilyn, for example, an endangered species like a wild dog, we had an example 2 days ago. They darted a wild dog that seemed to be cut quite badly, and so the vets looked after that. I think it was probably substantially worse than this one, and so they're not going to worry about this cut. She's not even limping, so I think she's absolutely fine. Infection, I don't believe, is a risk here at all. Now, there's another road just around the corner there, and I think it's probably going to be worth our while to head towards that road there. Just keeping an ear out for the radio, just in case those guys... Ryan, of course, who was in the sighting with us, knows this property extremely well because he is the head ranger here. You can just see this erosion gully here that we would never have got the vehicle through. And we'll just go around the corner here and see if she doesn't pop out the other side, and we'll observe the splendor, there you go, of the African sunset while we do it. She might come out here, you know, and eat that impala for dinner. That impala, of course, none the wiser. I reckon these impala, if they had half a brain, they could figure out quite quickly when they were in danger. When suddenly there were 3 vehicles around, reversing and going over bushes, they'd think, something vicious in these parts. Now, David, we've lost the aerial again, I'm afraid. I'm very sorry. Alright, we're going to stop here, I think. No, Let's go a little bit further on. You know what? Those impala behind us that I'm not sure if you saw or not are going to be useful because they will shout. They will shout if they see her. And I think she might just pop out over here. We don't know about her cub at this stage. We don't know if Zara is still alive. Apparently she was seen on her own about 3 nights ago, the night after Shadow was seen mating. There are some tracks here. Well, that's of a hyena. I wonder if little Zara isn't somewhere in these bushes here. Let's just keep an eye out. So I really hope that she doesn't fall pregnant this time. I really hope that perhaps this is a false estrus. It definitely hasn't been a full estrus. She would have been with the mate. She would have been with Tingana for much longer. You know, their mating doesn't take 1 night. It takes 4 or 5 nights often. Now she was heading directly for this area here. So let's just turn off. We'll see if we can hear some birds alarm calling. And because she is such a lover of termite mounds from which to use as vantage points, I'm going to stop just next to this one here and see what happens. Right, let's have a listen. See if we can hear any birds alarming. Hello, Susan in the United Kingdom. You wonder why I've switched the engine off. Susan, it's simply so that I can hear what's going on. I can't hear above the noise of the engine, and you remember the microphone that you're listening to me through is, well, it's attached to my hat. And that means you don't pick up much of the engine noise, but the engine is actually quite loud. So always ooh, hang on. There we are. There's some birds alarm calling up ahead of us. I'm just going to keep turning around behind us because she could easily pop out behind. Some monkeys up there, and if they see her, they'll go ballistic. That's actually quite a nice picture, which I think I've just ruined for you, David. Unfortunately, they were silhouetted quite nicely in the sun there. There you go. Hello, Kathy. You're in Florida, and you're wondering about Sindile, her last offspring. And you're wondering if he would look after his younger sister if he came across her. Unfortunately, he'd probably do quite the opposite. Leopards are solitary. They don't appreciate the company of others too much. And I suspect quite strongly, Kathy, that he would much more likely do his little sister harm than he would do her good. I'm not saying he would necessarily kill her. I'm of the opinion they may well have met, given how Sindile was desperately trying to kind of reunite with his mother. He spent a few days trying to reunite with her, and she just wasn't having anything to do with him. Excuse me. Isn't that a lovely shot of those monkeys? They're keeping watch for us. I'm watching behind us to see if she doesn't pop out. I think she's gone to ground inside this block. Because if they see her, they will start shouting very loudly. Let's go. I'm going to go a little bit forward. We're going to turn around just up ahead there, and then we'll come back this way and just see if she doesn't pop out. That is beautiful, David, is it not? Mm-hmm. All right, Steffi is with a very large elephant, so let's go across to him while we see if we can't re-find the tragic Shadow.
I don't know about so large, but definitely an elephant, James. But thank you for that. We've just had the most amazing time with the last 10 minutes or so with these elephant herds. They've come past the car, around us, didn't even bat an eyelid in our direction, and now the tail end of this particular herd is passing us. We've got this youngster who's feeding on a bush none of the others actually fed on. It is a red thorn that he is busy eating, which has had some feeding activity prior to this particular elephant, but not by any of the others. And there must be a good 7 or 8 of them that have passed that particular bush now. And you can see this elephant very gingerly actually using the trunk to push thorns into the mouth, or leaves into the mouth. And that's because this tree has got some quite vicious thorns on it. You can see, you can't really see the thorns on this tree. Perhaps just above the curl of the trunk, maybe a foot or so above the trunk, you can see just before the picture goes out the screen, you'll see some wicked thorns there. I don't know if an elephant is affected by thorns like we are. I mean, their skin is obviously leathery and very thick. They definitely do get hurt though. I've seen an elephant get some thorns stuck in their trunk, and you could see that it was a disturbance. But for the most part, I think it would be like a thorn in a callus on your hand or a thorn in a callus on your foot. It wouldn't have very much effect whatsoever. Now, elephants can lose actually quite a lot of their, they can break their tusks off. They definitely can do some significant damage to their ears in terms of ripping their ears into shreds and tatters and holes. They can do some damage to their trunk. We've had a few elephants that we've seen over the last year or so with damaged tips to their trunk. But what they can't do is they can't lose the function of their trunk. They cannot lose, oh look at that, trying to lean up there. As the weight gets transferred forward, they almost collapse underneath. I'll finish my previous statement in a second, but elephant can actually stand on their back feet. And it's, I mean, yes, we do see it in circus animals, or did, to my horror, but they can actually stand up on their back feet and lift their front feet off the ground to get branches that are out of their reach. And I mean, an elephant has got a significant reach. We're looking at 5.5 meters for a big male elephant, and then they can still stand on their back legs and lift up at probably another 3 feet or so. Easily as high as a giraffe, easily. And then when they're sick and tired of stretching up on their back legs, they can always just push the tree down, up to a point. Now, why I'm making that comment is because elephants have about 60% of their weight carried over their front legs. Now that, as you can imagine, all being transferred to what is quite pokey, in my words, their hips and their pelvis, which is there next to their tail, to me just looks a little bit, I don't know, insubstantial, I think is a respectful word for saying not developed enough. You can see leaning forward there. Their feet are actually different because of it. Very round feet in the front, and you can see that leg shank goes into the middle of their foot, whereas their back foot is very oval, and you can see that it almost has a heel and a toe section. The front part of the foot is a little bit longer than the back part, with those column-like legs. That's how they're described. Safari Ginny, you've asked an interesting question, one I've actually never been asked before. Do the thorns that an elephant eats shape their intestines? I would presume that you're making that comment based on the fact that how do the thorns go through their tummies without piercing the walls of their tummy or their throat or their intestines? And that's a good question. I'm actually trying to think now, have I seen full thorns in elephant dung? Because that would answer the question. If the thorns are passing through an elephant virtually unchanged, then yes. I mean, I couldn't imagine why an elephant's intestine wouldn't be perforated. I've never played with elephants' intestines before. But I would imagine, I haven't seen full thorns in elephant dung, so I would imagine that in the elephant's tummy, just the action of all the branches and the leaves and that is enough to blunt thorns to a point where it wouldn't be a danger for them and their intestines. But on that note, I think we are going to send you through to James, who's got what's left of the sunset to show you.
There we go, everybody. The sun is just sinking behind the Drakensberg Mountains, and just to give you a bit of perspective, everyone, it's quite important to note, I think, that at the height of winter, you can see that picture there. As we zoom out, the sun was going down to the right-hand side of the mountains, not just that mountain that it's gone down behind, but all those mountains to the right-hand side it went behind. So you can see it's coming back to the south as a harbinger of the season to come. And I think, when is the equinox? I think the equinox is probably around about the 20th of September, if I'm not mistaken. So it will be due west. It will be going down due west on the round about the 20th of September. Beautiful. It is amazing how quickly the sun goes down, isn't it, David? It is astounding. And you know what? No matter how many thousands of photographs of the sunset I've taken, not one of them has ever actually matched up to what the sunset really looks like. Now, David, off to the right-hand side of where we're looking, a little herd of elephants is hoping to catch an aeroplane, perhaps. Perhaps they're looking to go on a family holiday. Very peacefully moving down through the bushes. And giving us a bit of a smell. Well, Jill, you ask a very salient question here. You say if female elephants live in their natal herds for life, in other words, the herds into which they were born, how come we see such little herds sometimes? Jill, I think you're going to find that in a drought situation like this, I think that herd dynamics probably change quite significantly. So I think you'll find that mothers and their offspring and their attendant offspring, as opposed to, sort of split off from the main herd. So she perhaps could have been part of a bigger herd. And I don't know that there aren't more in the bushes around here, but let's pretend this is a herd of 3 or 4, like that herd of kind of 2 we saw earlier. I think you'll find that mothers and their offspring move off from that herd to go in search of little pockets of food that's left to eat, and perhaps that's more difficult in a big herd of females and their related offspring and of course their siblings. So I mean, in a normal herd you'd find her, possibly her sisters, a few aunts, and maybe her mother within the same herd, and then her offspring as well. But I think you'll find that those herds probably split up before they get too large. In this area, you'll read that 15 is a sort of normal size. About 8 to 10 elephants, I think, is a fairly standard issue sort of herd for this particular area. And I think you'll find that's probably 1 or 2 related females and their attendant offspring. Then, during good times, they'll get a little bit bigger. And during the dry season, but when there's still a lot of food left, so let's say the dry season after a lot of rain, so if we'd had a normal rainy season last year, I think you'll find that perhaps the herds would be slightly bigger than they are now. But that's a very good question, because yes, you would expect there to be enormous herds, but it does discount the thought that they do fragment, and we don't often talk about the fragmentation of the herds. And I just think that, you can see how they are looking quite skinny, they're looking a bit hippie. In other words, their hips are sticking out. I don't mean they look like they're about to smoke a big J-Lo and paint flowers on themselves. They quite like that image. They're just looking a little bit skinny, and I think that means that they have to split apart and go in search of the last little pockets of good elephant forage. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, if you think I'm talking rubbish, you're more than welcome to tell me. I'll cry briefly, but I'll get over it. The hippie herd. All the leaves are brown. Do you think this elephant went to Woodstock? Possibly. Do you think it owns a folksy van?
I'd be impressed if it did.
Yeah, so would I. I can't get that image out of my head. Hippie elephants. Stony silence from the final control. They don't think it's very funny in the slightest. Alright, well, let's carry on just around the corner here. See if we can get another view. Still a steady silence from the final control. Just check my earpiece here. Nothing. No. Dave's not getting anything either. And no comment. Just a number of presumptions from a couple of viewers. Anyway. I'm not sure I want to know what those are. Here's an aeroplane, everybody. The Cessna Caravan, very fine bush aircraft. Right. Let's take one last look at these elephants before they go off to their commune, and we'll head across to Steph and get an update from him.
We've obviously left the site of that elephant herd. They've moved off into the thick bush, moving directly towards a patch of bush where even in winter we really can't drive through that area. It's just very, very, very thick. And I hope they spend a little bit more time feeding and then go and churn up the mud there at Buffelshoek Dam and create a well that whatever water is left there can then seep into and create a bit more of a pool for the animals for tomorrow. So that is my wish for them tonight, and obviously everything that goes with it. We're now sort of chasing the sunset. We'll obviously never catch it. It's now currently doing about 1,400 kilometers an hour, which is just shy of 1,000 miles an hour, speeding off in that direction. And we are now going towards Vuyatela Dam. I want to see what sort of attention this late afternoon has, or the water has attracted this late afternoon. We're going to do that by looking at a combination of things. One is the tracks on the road, which tell us what's been walking in that particular direction, and another would be being there and listening. Now this is the time of the evening, as you no doubt saw from Shadow moving off in the blocks, that these animals will get going. And they do not move very, very far away from water. Water is what's attracting all their prey at the moment. And they will be moving between one water point and another, looking for any opportunity that they can. And the unfortunate thing over here, I suppose, is the fact that there's too much water around. There's the Sand River, which has many pools in it, I'm sure. Every camp has a pumped pan of some sort, form or description that is around their areas. And so it's difficult to predict predator movements. Well, it's past the point that they will be around water. In other areas where I've worked, water has been very far away, sometimes up to 60 kilometers from one point to another. And then those water points become these most unbelievable collection points for animals, with about the most extreme example that I can think of at the moment being Etosha, where in the driest times of the year, the end of September to the end of October, animals form a never-ending procession around the watering holes, and at any given time you'll have between 12 and 15 different species of animal around a watering point, changing every 20 minutes to a different 12 or 15 species of animal. It was just the most extreme example that I can think of how water becomes sort of the center of everything out here. So just checking now as we come up onto Gowrie Cutline. Got some fresh hippo tracks, some zebra tracks. Nothing much in terms of anything else in front of us. Mike and Ali, all the way from Florida, who've been watching the show for a couple of months now. Hello. You've just commented on the fact that you've seen, obviously, the progression of the drought and all the different animals that come with that. Can we expect, or will we expect, a change of animals? Will we get animals migrating into this area as summer comes about and as we get a little bit more rain and a little bit more water? Not really, to be honest with you. We will see a significant rise in the amount of birds that are migratory. With the first ones, I already saw the first yellow-billed kite on Saturday. So for those of you keeping dates of the area, the first yellow-billed kite I saw all the way from Morocco arrived in my area on Saturday. And then insects, amphibians, snakes. So you're going to see a dramatic increase in the smaller things and the more exciting things to look at. But in terms of animal-wise, no. We don't get animals that migrate away from here and then migrate back again. Generally, the things in the Kruger National Park are sedentary. We don't have large mammals that move away. But we will see a dramatic increase in birds. And I hope I've answered your question. I feel like I've answered it and haven't answered it at the same time, because I'm under the impression that you asked that about any of the larger mammals, larger, more impressive mammals or predators. And to that question, no. If you're talking about just biodiversity, 100-fold, 1,000-fold increase in the amount of activity that we'll see here, but you'd have to go to a bit of a smaller scale to see that. Out on the bushwalk that we've got going out, and then obviously the nighttime, going into the night, we'll see a lot more activity on the roads in terms of snakes and insects, amphibians. Jeremy, you just said that you were in the Kruger National Park today and you've seen a martial eagle. Well done to that. They're actually not that common. They're quite difficult birds to see, the largest of all our eagles around here. And you said we should keep our eyes open for it coming in this direction. Well, Jeremy, the martial eagles are territorial. They hold territories, especially big, large martial eagles like I'm guessing that you saw today. So that martial eagle that you saw today lives in that particular area. It's about 50 kilometers squared is their territory. I know that was a fact that I got from a martial eagle pair in a drier area than the Kruger, so it's probably a bit smaller than 50 square kilometers. But in this area, there'll be its own martial eagle. They're not migratory. They're sedentary, so they live in one area all the time. They don't disappear with the seasons. Unlike a Wahlberg's eagle, for instance, which absolutely migrates. Wahlberg's eagle comes from the Mediterranean rim, and they will migrate down here. And we're expecting the first Wahlberg's eagle any day now. I'm not actually sure what date Brent predicted that they'd be back. I have no doubt that he's put some money on it. And just heard Rebecca said that Brent had a Wahlberg's eagle yesterday, so there we go. So they're here already. So welcome back to them. Definitely one of those decent signs that that summer, or at least spring, is not far around the corner at all. That and all the knobthorns that have been flowering lately. All I'm waiting for is the first weeping boer beans to start flowering, and then that is where you're going to be catching me doing significant segments from, with all their associated birds. First, the nectivores, birds that come for the just overabundance of nectar that the weeping boer bean produces, and then the insectivores, the birds that have been holding out on frugal fare. All right, and while we carry on up the road here into the sunset, James has got an update for you.
We are back on Djuma, everybody, after a rather spectacular afternoon on Arathusa. Started off slowly, one lonely hippopotamus and some angry Egyptian geese, followed by a great deal of barren nothingness until we came down to the waterhole. Incredible elephants. I said it again, David, you may not hit me. No, on the back of the head. Oh, thank you. I will never say it again. And yes, then we saw Shadow, and that was very nice, after we saw the pigs, which David found very funny. Now, what I do want to do here, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. David, heaving elephants. They've pushed over the lilac-breasted roller nest. Yes, I agree with you, oh no. Keep me posted on the audio. Everybody, this is where the lilac-breasted rollers we watched building their nest. I don't think this was elephants. I think this blew
lost
over.
you.
Nothing.
Lost you, yep.
You got me now?
Yep, better.
I think this blew over everybody during that incredible wind we had the other day. The nest was just under here. Hello? Just where I'm sticking this piece of bark. I don't think they'd laid any eggs yet, because it was obviously very early, so I'm sure they were just examining different sites. That's very sad. Oh well. These are the tragedies and trials of the wilderness, everyone. What a pity. I was so pleased because I'd found a nest. I'm not a very good nest finder. Scott used to find all the nests, and I was going to happily tell him that I'd found a lilac-breasted roller nest. Now all I've got is a rotting tree on the ground. Dash it all, David, dash it all. Let's continue. Let me turn off the radio now, because I don't have to listen to it anymore. Not you, Rebecca. Obviously I want to listen to you. Right, well, it's a gorgeous evening. It's quite warm. Now, it was very, very cold this morning, about, they said 9 degrees. Eggsy and I were freezing on our little drive to Cheetah Plains, and indeed on the way back. So whatever front it was has cleared off, and then it was quite hot again during the middle of the day, and it's cooling down beautifully into the evening. And while we may have sounded like we were complaining about the cold over the course of the last few months, please be aware that after last year's summer, we were very, very grateful for it indeed. David, I'm afraid your tail is flapping backwards again. The aerial is not behaving itself today. Connor has put an industrial-sized bearing on it, which means you could probably use it to attach a tractor tire. Anyway, it's certainly more robust than any of the others we've ever had. I'm so sad about my lilac-breasted rollers. I'm sure they'll find another home. Oh well. Now Karula, with any luck, will come back sometime soon. I don't know if she was on Chitwa Chitwa today, but we had two viewers come around and see us today, Valerie and Velma, and Velma swore blind that she was going to find me a leopard this afternoon. Well, she's failed so far. She has till Sunday to make good on her promises. So we'll see if she manages to achieve that. And as you can see, we don't really need the spotlight anymore, and that's why, of course, probably come the change of the month, or just thereafter maybe, we'll change the afternoon time to a little bit later, so that we have about 15 minutes of dark or so before the end. It is quite exciting to drive around at night for a while, but you know, at the end of the day, you don't see a great deal, and these cameras are just not really set up for deep darkness. And of course then there's the issue of the effect that we have on animals at night with a blinding white sun-bright spotlight. The last of the, let's just go slowly down here. Hello, Tim. Tim or Kim, Becca? Tim or Kim? Kilo or Tango? Tango. Tango, Tim. Hello, Tim in Australia. You say you've just found the stream, and you say you can't believe you've only just found it, and how often do we do it? Tim, it's your lucky day. We do it twice a day. 6 to 9 in the morning, 3 to 6 in the afternoon, depending on the season. That's what we're doing at the moment. So please do join us. It's lovely to hear from Australia. Where in Australia are you from? We have a few viewers in Australia who generally ask us exceptional questions. So I hope that you will continue that fine tradition. All right, everybody, that's going to be it from David and I. Thank you very much for joining us with the elephants and Shadow and the pigs. David, lovely to work with you again. I'm sorry that I nearly made you cough up whatever it was you were drinking on, yes, the pigs. Okay, everybody, we'll see you tomorrow at 0600. Until then, stay safe and happy wherever you are, and we'll hand you over to Steph for the last few minutes. Bye-bye.
That's it. Thank you very much, James. And it has been such a spectacular day. Myself and Brian were just busy talking about how quick the last 3 hours have just blasted past. It seems like a blink of an eye, and we've had some epic sightings today. I think the highlight for me, definitely, and probably the highlight of the month so far, has been that impala fight that we managed to witness. I see Brian's busy saying yes, he agrees fully with me on that one. I hope that some of you recorded it all. That was one of the most epic impala fights I've ever seen. In actual fact, I'll go down as saying that is the most epic impala fight I have ever seen. And then we had to spend some time, we just had to spend some time at Buffelshoek Dam with our hippo. And it's not a plaster cast, I think we're almost certain of that. And some buffalo. And then we went on to the most really peaceful sighting with that elephant herd that we were with. And now we're just sort of driving into the sunset, to be honest with you. Keeping our eyes upturned as the stars start to twinkle out of the skies, and this little nip comes into the air, which is actually quite nice. Now we've got some pearl-spotted owls that have started to duet out of the forest in front of us, and I think this is exactly where we are going to stop and say goodnight to you. I can actually see one, so we can quickly turn onto it just before we say goodbye. And there we go, in the tree there, Brian. Have you got him? Oh, well done. There we go. Pearl-spotted owlet, just to say good night and goodbye. There's those false eyes on the back of the head. The two eyes on the back of the head making attack from the rear less likely. And there they go. And that is pearl-spotted owlet, just to say good night after such a fantastic evening. All right. So, we've got a comment coming through from Gracie, who says, thank you very much for the dragon. And we're just going to show it to you one last time there, Gracie, just to say goodnight to you. There it comes. There we go. The Chinese dragon on Brian's thumb. All right. So from myself and Brian, and for the whole FC crew, I know Rebecca's on D1. I'm not too sure who's on D2. I'm sure it's probably Lou. And to the rest of the Wild Earth team, thank you very, very much. And to all of you, of course, absolutely thank you for your following, thank you for your questions, thank you for your comments, and thank you for all the support that you show us. We look forward to seeing you again at 0600 again tomorrow, and I hope it's going to be a little bit warmer than it was this morning because it was freezing. All right, all the best wherever you are in the world. Have a good day.